Sponsored by Huel. If you want to see the uncut version of this video with all of the swearing and things that I couldn't show you on YouTube, head on over to my Patreon, patreon.com/TraplawRoss. By the numbers, Eminem is by far the most successful rapper in American history on numerous metrics. With over 200 million records sold, 50 platinum certified albums, 10 of which reaching #1. He's got 22 top 10 Billboard hits, over 90 chart entries, and 3 #1 singles that went diamond, selling over 10 million copies each. Eminem's influence on rap and music as a whole has spread across the globe, and over the last few decades he has won the hearts of rap fans all over the world from every race, religion, and background. And his music and the stories behind the music are a big part of his success, literally coming from the gutter and rising to the very top of the music industry in an iconic rags to riches American dream story. A story that no doubt inspired a whole generation of downtrodden teens all over the world to make something of themselves too. But as any true fan will know, part of what makes Eminem so moving and relatable is the fact that his music is incredibly personal. Whether it's going into deep detail about the difficult family life he had growing up, witnessing his own mother battling addiction, or being picked on by the bullies at his school, or the struggles of not being taken seriously as a white man in the predominantly black rap music industry. Eminem's personal battles and struggles formed a huge part of the subject matter of his music, and one particular aspect of his personal life that's been hugely prominent in his music over the years was his tumultuous relationship with childhood sweetheart Kim Scott. Eminem would make countless songs going into detail about the rocky relationship he's had with Kim, even going as far as to release numerous tracks where he would joke and fantasize about committing violent acts towards her. Now, given how their toxic relationship was depicted both in his music and the fictionalized relationship in his movie 8 Mile, it's sometimes baffling to think why on earth would Eminem choose not only to have a child with and marry Kim, but even after many painful separations, legal battles, divorce, addiction, and making numerous songs prophesizing her grisly demise, Eminem would bizarrely rekindle his relationship with Kim over and over, even going as far as to marry her a second time even after the years of abuse and heartbreak on both sides. It's a misguided union that was always destined for disaster. Eminem and Kim are quite possibly the most toxic couple in American history, with their bitter romance stretching back a whopping 35 years at this point. But despite the tidbits we got from scattered lyrics over the years, no one has ever broken down the entire sorry drama between Eminem and Kim from start to finish. Until now. So today, let's go all the way back to that trailer in 8 Mile and take a deep dive into hip-hop's most famous and cursed romance, and explore every single euphoric up and crushing low in the toxic relationship of Eminem and Kim. There's been conflicting reports over the years regarding how Eminem and Kim met, but according to a complex article citing a Rolling Stone interview with Eminem himself, he met Kim when he was 15 and she was 13, when he was apparently standing on a table with his shirt off rapping LL Cool J's song I'm Bad. This was in roughly 1987, and if they met when Eminem was age 15, and at the time of recording Eminem is 50, this truly means that this has been a 35-year love story. Now, if you followed Eminem's music or seen 8 Mile, you'll know that Eminem grew up on some of the most poverty-stricken streets of Detroit, and Kim was right there with him. And just like Eminem, she had trouble at home from a young age too. Many years later, in an interview with Dr. Keith, Kim would actually open up about her rough upbringing growing up in some of the poorest parts of Detroit.
It was me and my sister and my mom. She was a single mother. We don't know our father. My mom was on welfare. She worked under the table at a bar. We were so poor that my sister and I had to shoplift just to get food when we were between the ages of 4 and 5.
Clearly, she had a lot in common with Eminem himself, who struggled with his difficult mother Debbie and her problems with pills and alcohol. But despite Eminem's lifelong feud with his mother, who he seemingly spent years hating, there was actually once a time when Debbie Mathers welcomed Kim into her home with open arms. In fact, once they met, Eminem's mother would allow Kim to stay with them in her home permanently, with Eminem's mother Debbie recalling meeting Kim for the first time in her memoir, saying that a 15-year-old Eminem brought her home and Kim had claimed to be 15, though Debbie thought she looked like she could have been 17. However, Debbie would only later discover that Kim was only 13 at this time, something which Eminem would continue to deny. Debbie apparently took Kim into her home and treated her as the daughter she always wanted, lending her clothes and teaching her to use makeup. And over time, apparently Kim would open up to Debbie about her own troubled past, suggesting that she had been subjected to abuse of both a physical and sexual nature, but Debbie would have some doubts. But despite the relationship between them getting closer, Kim would still rebel against Debbie as if she was one of her own parents, with Kim apparently refusing to do chores around the house, or trailer, apparently expecting to be cleaned up after, and even apparently stealing lingerie from Debbie and denying it after being caught red-handed. Kim's presence in the Mathers household was purely toxic. Debbie actually recounted a heartbreaking instance where Kim had told debt collectors that Debbie couldn't keep up with the payments on her furniture, leading Debbie to lose all of her belongings while she attended the funeral for her brother Ronnie. It really does seem that, from Debbie's account at least, Kim was a toxic figure in the house from day one. But Eminem couldn't see this, and he would regularly get dragged deeply into whatever trouble Kim wanted to get them both into. Eminem and Kim would frequently run away from home together, and according to Debbie's memoirs, a manipulative Kim would often goad Eminem into fights by falsely claiming that other men had attacked her. Funnily enough, Kim was never supportive of Eminem's music either. Debbie would claim that Eminem's sole focus was rap before he met Kim, but once he got a girlfriend, his focus shifted solely to her, and she would make fun of his music, telling him he would never make it, and encouraging him to throw his rhyme books in the trash. Little did she know. Now, it's clear from these snippets from Debbie's biography that Kim was not a positive force in Eminem's life. She seemingly had an abusive and controlling nature, perhaps coming the result of the abuse that she had suffered at the hands of her original family, or perhaps simply the result of a small-minded, childish nature and jealous personality. Maybe if Kim had somebody in her life growing up to teach her the right way to treat people or the right way to handle her emotions, things could have been different. Sadly, that wasn't the case, and at this time, the young, naive, and negative Kim simply could not fathom that Eminem might just find success beyond the streets of Detroit's slums. Debbie Mathers clearly identified some of these issues and even claimed to have attempted to ban Kim from the house. But at this point, Em was under her spell, frequently being told by Kim that he would need to choose between her or his mum. Now naturally, with such a toxic and absolutist approach to the relationship, it's no surprise that eventually Kim and Em would break up for some reason. And from here, a pattern would emerge in the relationship, whereby anytime Eminem would move on and find some new woman, Kim would manufacture some drama to meddle in Em's life once again. And this cycle would repeat pretty much their entire lives. But soon a life-changing event would take place that would change Eminem and Kim's destiny forever, as well as impacting all of his career going forward. Because despite Eminem having briefly found a new and more stable girlfriend, Kim would reveal that she had fallen pregnant with Em's child in 1995, prompting Eminem to leave his new stable relationship and return to chaos with Kim. Their daughter, Haley Jade Mathers, would arrive on Christmas Day 1995. But the spiral of abuse would continue, and now Em and Kim's new child Haley would now become a pawn in her mind games against him. In fact, apparently the toxicity started from the very day Haley was born, as Kim would apparently refuse to put Eminem's name on the birth certificate, stating that because this was the case at her birth, her daughter should suffer the same fate. Despite Eminem doing the right thing and always wanting to be there for his child from day one, because Eminem's father was never there for him, and no doubt he wanted a chance to break that cycle for his child, but Kim would attempt to keep even that opportunity from him. But despite the abuse, Eminem would vow to take an active role in bringing up his daughter, a vow that we would see him keep publicly throughout his career, for better or for worse. From here, Kim would allegedly use newborn Haley as a weapon against Em and Debbie, threatening constantly to withhold her from them. And the tension would continue to brew between Em and Kim as they both continued to work to support their newborn child. Eminem would work at Gilbert's Lodge restaurant in St. Clair Shores, and Kim would work at a massage parlor which Debbie claimed had a dubious background with unusual services being offered. A Detroit rapper who was around Eminem in the early days, named Hush, would later reveal in a Cam Capone interview that Eminem would continue to have endless confrontations with Kim following the birth of their child, telling one shocking story of an instance where Kim was working at that massage parlor, and apparently Eminem was suspicious that she was sleeping with the boss, with Hush apparently having to go find Eminem before he did something crazy to them both outside of the business.
Kim at this time was working at a massage parlor. He's on his way to that massage parlor where Kim works, and he's gonna kill her. He thinks she's sleeping with her boss. This fool is out of his car, crouched down behind a dumpster, peeking around the corner, waiting on her. What are you doing right now? Like, man, f that bitch. Like, I'm a killer. That bitch, I know she's sleeping with blah, blah, blah. And I was like, man, get in the car. Like, you're stupid. Here she comes, walking out of the massage parlor, walking with this dude. She's got a rose in her hand. She's just like, doop, da doop, da doop, da doop. And he gets out the car like, you blah, 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 blah. And I'm just like...
The cycle of ups and downs between Eminem and Kim would seemingly never end. In fact, one account by M's best friend and D12 bandmate Proof suggested that they would often come back from shows together to find all of Eminem's clothes thrown out the window, with Proof saying that Eminem would frequently swing between saying that he's leaving her for good and then being back with her the next day, prophetically predicting that Em would indeed end up marrying Kim. And these ups and downs were extreme on both sides and would continue in the years to come, with Kim and Eminem swinging from being together deeply in a manic love to splitting up and Kim using Hailey as a weapon against Em. And during these periods of the relationship being on hold, Eminem would fall into a deep pit of depression, fostering a dark hatred towards Kim. At some point around this time, during a period of turbulence in their relationship, Eminem would even get a spiteful tattoo of a tombstone on his stomach that read "Rot in Pieces, Kim." Hardly a great omen of their relationship to come, but it shows just how dark and dangerous their psychotic love affair could get at times. So during the times when Eminem was being kept away from his daughter and the woman he loved, at least he would be able to fall back on his main passion, which Kim never seemed to want to support, his music and his rhyme book. So regardless of the struggles in his personal life, Eminem would continue pushing his music career forward for the next couple of years. But sadly, it would be quite some time before he would have his shot and become the household name that we know him as today. But now, a word from our sponsor. Look, if you had 100% nutritionally complete snack, gave you everything you ever needed, one serving, would you purchase it or just let it dash? Yo, if you need a snack suitable for vegans and nutritionally complete and convenient at that, one serving, and on the surface it's a simple shake, but got more nutrition than most meals I make. You're a straight fool if you don't even try out Huel at the gym or school. You know it's gonna leave you full. I'm hungry now, got no time to cook some chow, and each serving has 20 grams of protein. Wow, cut back to the kitchen. Oh, my food's missing. I'm sitting here wishing for fire nutrition. Cooking makes me bored and meal prep's a chore. I save time by keeping Huel up in the drawer. Huel sustainably sourced ingredients are tasty of course, sugar free and fair price so you can afford. You know it's a source of vitamin D and more minerals, it's critical, so what you waiting for? You better Huel yourself when you're hungry. It's lovely, trust me, there's nothing better on the go. You only get one meal with Huel, you can keep it real. 105 calories in a serving. You better Huel yourself like you mean it. Convenient ingredients are sustainable, you know. Whoa. You only get one meal with Huel, you can keep it real. Don't go broke buying unhealthy snacks now. You better Huel yourself. Listen, if you need a healthy snack on the go, alright, don't fool yourself, Huel yourself, okay? I can't make these banger videos if I'm in the kitchen cooking all day, okay? My favourite flavour is the vanilla fudge because I could eat dessert every meal of the day, alright? 2023, we're going to hit our goals, eat healthy and not waste any more money on unhealthy snacks. So get on the Huel, and with your first order, you'll receive a Huel t-shirt and a guide to get you started, people, okay? Hit that link in description and try out Huel today. Appreciate Huel for sponsoring this video, and I'm out. Peace. In November 1996, Eminem released his first full-length rap project titled Infinite, with the help of then indie record label FBT Productions, run by brothers Mark and Jeff Bass. They would discover Eminem in the early days, hearing him freestyling on a local radio show and borrowing $1,500 to press up 500 copies of Eminem's first attempt at a full-blown project. With this legendary project Infinite being infinitely forgotten by casual Eminem fans these days. But the die-hard Eminem stans will know that this was Eminem's first major effort at getting recognised for his raps, and unfortunately, this would represent a major failure for him. The project itself was laced with introspective and lyrical tracks where Eminem would rap about his relationship with Kim and struggles to support his newborn daughter Hailey, like the track It's Okay, which sees Eminem expressing his aspirations to be happily married and be able to provide for his daughter financially, as well as with Eminem elaborating on his ongoing and desperate hunt for money on the track Never Too Far, with the lyrics suggesting that the song was made whilst Eminem's daughter was still on the way. And there's also the track Backstabber, an apparent track about a green-haired Detroit rapper called Champtown. He had apparently been friends with Eminem in the early days, with M even appearing in the background of his music video for the 1992 track Doodah Dippity. Champtown had apparently tried to get with Kim behind Eminem's back, an apparent discretion which may have provided inspiration for that scene in 8 Mile where Eminem's love interest cheats on him in the studio. But interestingly, this track was also one of the earliest instances of Eminem using his lyrics to play out a violent revenge fantasy, with Eminem going on to rap about his plans to go on a mission to beat Champtown mercilessly, with the song culminating in describing a bloody scene involving a butcher knife and handcuffs. Despite early sparks of inspiration and painting a picture of his rock-bottom life in the gritty streets of Detroit, the Project Infinite was a commercial failure, with Eminem self-releasing around 500 copies and struggling to sell them all. Ironically, that original pressing of Infinite is now incredibly rare and a holy grail amongst rap fans. If anyone's got a copy, by the way, and wants to sell me that, hit my Instagram, @TrapLawRoss. Anyway, at the time, people were not seeking the original pressing of Infinite, and in her later memoir, Eminem's mother Debbie would recall Eminem being mocked on the local radio station, being described as a knockoff Vanilla Ice. And Eminem would later tell Spin magazine in a 2000 interview that the project was a failure and he would even lose his job soon after the release, finding himself broke at Christmas on Hailey's first birthday, being in tears with only $40 to spend. Money was clearly a worry for Eminem at this time, and as he would reveal later on the track Mockingbird, what little money him and Kim could save up for their daughter often ended up getting stolen anyway, putting a further strain on Em and Kim's on and off relationship. The only silver lining to be found around this time was that Eminem's hardships after Infinite flopping so hard was it left him with a complete nothing to lose attitude, leading him to get angrier and angrier, making more aggressive music. Unfortunately for him, his family, and his millions of future fans, he wouldn't give up on music. Eminem would push on, continuing to rap and recording his next project, the Slim Shady EP, a short collection of tracks not to be confused with his later Slim Shady LP that was his breakout album. The concept of this project revolved around Eminem's new alter ego, Slim Shady, which was born when his buddy Proof decided to form the Detroit rap collective D12, or the Dirty Dozen, but only being able to find 6 MCs to join the crew, he came up with the idea that each rapper would have an alter ego, with each rapper and their alter ego being displayed prominently in the excellent booklet for their debut album, Devil's Night, with Eminem in his new Slim Shady persona recording more and more violent songs using vivid language to describe the twisted fantasies of his alter ego. Eminem would describe Slim Shady in an August 2000 Spin magazine interview as the name for his temper or anger, the attitude behind the real man, likely using his music and this alter ego as a release from his difficult personal life. And with this new direction, Eminem would actually finally begin to build a genuine buzz around the Detroit rap scene, with people taking note of the new direction his music was taking, as well as building up a fearsome reputation from constant clashes in the local Detroit battle rap scene. But even though he was finally getting some respect and inspiration on the mic, he was still struggling with money, and his increasingly difficult on and off relationship with Kim. At some point during their intense on and off relationship, Kim would prevent Eminem from seeing his daughter Hailey, apparently due to her disapproving parents, with a frustrated Eminem turned Slim Shady at some point in 1997 recording the shocking track Just the Two of Us, with Eminem telling a fictional story of riding around in the car with his daughter Hailey after killing Kim and stuffing her body into the trunk of a car, and describing himself and his daughter as the 1997 version of Bonnie and Clyde, with Eminem rapping lyrics that tell the story of that car journey as he reassures Hailey about the strange smell coming out of the trunk and telling her not to play with Daddy's toy knife. He would tell his daughter to ignore the scratches on her mum's throat, but this wasn't just some twisted violent rant on a song. Eminem would display a masterclass in narrative storytelling on this track, with the story of the song slowly unfolding, with M suggesting that him and Hailey were driving Kim to go for a late night swim, with Eminem really planning to dump the body in the ocean. And he would go on to rap to his daughter in kind of baby talk that Kim has been real bad and that he's had to put her on timeout, even chillingly telling Hailey that her mum can't hear her screaming in her ears. And eventually the climax of the song would come in the third verse, where Eminem and Hailey literally throw Kim off the dock into the sea, tying her foot to a rock. And Eminem would rap in the final eerie 4 bars of the song that he's finally free of the restraining order that Kim had against him, saying to Hailey in the final line of the song after dumping Kim into the ocean that she needs to help him with 2 more things out the trunk, inferring that Kim's new partner and stepson have actually suffered the same fate as her. Now, this was a shocking and brutal song, but it's impossible to ignore the skillful writing and the artistic merit of Eminem expressing these extreme emotions so succinctly in a rap, with him later admitting in an interview with Much that the relationship had pushed him to such a dark place that he truly did imagine doing these things to Kim, even suggesting that other men in the same situation likely did have the same fantasies as he did. Clearly, Eminem was using his music as an outlet to express his darkest, deepest emotions, and it would be this ingredient that would eventually catapult him to stardom, with him becoming the voice of angry young men all over America. And whilst this wouldn't necessarily mean that he was advocating for actual violence against the mother of his child, no doubt this sort of content would be a hard pill for Kim to swallow. But to add insult to injury for Kim, Eminem would even take his daughter Hailey to the studio to record backup vocals for this song, apparently lying to Kim and telling her that they had gone to Chuck E. Cheese together that day. Kim apparently went ballistic once she found out that Hailey was a song all about her death, But ironically, only a few weeks after recording this violent revenge fantasy aimed at her, Eminem and Kim had indeed reconciled and got back together. But regardless, Eminem would continue to try and get things going in his rap career in the midst of his toxic relationship, with all of this going on without a clue that major industry success was only a few years away. But of course, all the while, Kim would be right there to try and sabotage every effort of Eminem's to make it in the rap game. And of course, the spotlight beginning to shine on M would perhaps be eating up Kim inside. Eminem would eventually complete and release his Slim Shady EP on December the 10th, 1997, a project which indeed included that shocking track, Just the Two of Us. Detroit rapper Hush would reveal another story to Cam Capone from this period, when apparently at the December 1997 CD release party for the Slim Shady EP, Kim apparently confronted M and spat on him in front of everyone.
At his record release party for Slim Shady EP, at some point, she gets jealous. She gets jealous of him being, looking like he's getting some love. So she picks a fight with him in front of everybody. And she started a fight with him, and people had to get in the middle. She literally spit on him right in his face in front of everybody. And she had to be dragged out of his record release party and was not allowed back in.
She was known to be jealous of Eminem's success and blowing up at him every time he was getting some shine. But it's also possible that she was mad about this scathing diss track and murder fantasy towards her, which I assume was played in front of everybody for the entire release party to hear. Anywho, despite Kim's hurt feelings, Eminem, with the help of his Slim Shady persona, had finally crafted the winning formula for rap stardom. His use of this alter ego in his music to express his darkest and innermost feelings on songs, combined with his high-level lyrical ability, crafted from hundreds of hours in the battle rap circuit, would make Eminem arguably the most successful rapper to ever live. But chances are, Eminem and Kim couldn't have possibly imagined what awaited them on the other side of that success. And so, only a month after the release of the Slim Shady EP, Eminem would fly to Los Angeles on a fateful trip where he would famously be discovered by rap game legend Dr. Dre, who saw the potential in Slim Shady and took him under his wing, and changing the lives of Eminem and Kim forever. Shortly before the Slim Shady EP released, in October 1997, Eminem would go to Los Angeles for the Rap Olympics, where he would come in second place.
Nobody's hearing you. You're a whack liar. Damn, all your white jokes just backfired. Cause bitch, you walking up the wrong creek. I go tell all your boys that you was beat by a honky.
But whilst in California, he also appeared on a freestyle session on the Wake Up Show, where he was named as the show's Freestyle Performer of the Year. With his prolific raps impressing so many people on this trip, a copy of the Slim Shady EP would end up in the hands of an intern at Interscope. This would eventually be passed to industry heavy hitter Jimmy Iovine and LA rap legend Dr. Dre, who would hear it and take Eminem under his wing.
And then when I was in the Rap Olympics back in '97, I took second place in the Rap Olympics and gave my tape to some kids at Interscope. And Interscope gave the tape to Jimmy Iovine, and Jimmy Iovine liked it and he gave it to Dre. He played it for Dre. And Dre liked it, and Dre was looking for me, and found me like 3 days later.
Within just months of releasing the Slim Shady EP, it seemed like Eminem's career was finally taking off. In March 1998, he would get national coverage in the Source magazine's Unsigned Hype column, describing his Kim murder fantasy track, Just the Two of Us, as a semi-demented, guaranteed rewinder. And that same month, Eminem would be officially signed to Dr. Dre's record label under Interscope, Aftermath. And from here, the rap game's favourite doctor would get to operating, helping Eminem craft his breakout hit album, the Slim Shady LP, that would catapult him to the top of the rap game and to international stardom. And despite getting column inches in magazines for songs dedicated to fantasizing about her demise, at least for a short period, Kim would remain at Eminem's side during his ascension to the top of the music industry. Years later, on the track Mockingbird, Eminem said that when he met Dr. Dre, he flew Haley and Kim out to see them. For example, even in this throwback interview, you could see Eminem seemingly accompanied by both Dr. Dre and Kim, who appeared off screen, with him joking about Dre and Kim's presence in seemingly good spirits.
And there was this lady named Wendy Day. You touch me again, I'm gonna kill you. And I'm not playing. You hear me?
You slap the shit out of me.
I'm gonna slap the piss out of you. You know what, Kim? Let me tell you something. You know how you're up? I'll tell you what, you fat. I'll tell you what. You know what?
You know what? Give that back.
Oh, here. Sure, I'm gonna give it to you. Yeah, right. You're fat. I'll tell you what. You're so fired. You were never hired. I'll tell you. You know what? Hey, you know what? Take your big ears and you fly out of here. You fly out of here, dumbo. I'll tell you what. You know what? Now you get the first part of your name because you're dumb. you're fat, bro. I tell you what, you're fat. You know what, you can say you all day on the bridge of my nose, but it still doesn't matter, because you're in your hoe, still like me. And I'll tell you what, you got some fake ass Nikes, and they cost $10. New Balance. New Balance. Oh, you know what, you have no balance, because I'm a... You're fat. I'll tell you what.
However, even with the money to fly her across the country, and with a successful rap career looming, this didn't stop the ups and downs in the relationship from intensifying. In Anthony Bozza's biography of Eminem, he explains that after proposing to Kim, and even buying her a car with his record deal advance money during this period, Eminem would actually return from LA to Detroit to find that Kim had returned the engagement ring and made off with the car, with Eminem waiting outside the house all night, noticing she never came home, then catching her out in a lie when he called her the next day, claiming to still be in LA and asking what she did last night, with Kim actually lying to Eminem, saying that she did come home when she didn't. This would descend into another argument where M would demand the car be given back, and thus the toxic cycle would continue. No wonder then, with this relationship turbulence continuing, whilst Eminem was hopping in and out of state to craft his future classic, when he got in the booth, he would lean even deeper into these murder fantasies about Kim that were picking him up so much buzz in the industry. An updated version of the song Just the Two of Us would be created, with a new title, 97 Bonnie and Clyde. With this infamous version of the song not only being one of the most popular tracks on his Slim Shady LP that was released on the 23rd of February 1999, but the album's cover art would also be inspired by this very song, with a grisly image depicting this fictional murder that took place on the song, with the picture showing Eminem and Haley at the pier that he says that he's going to dump Kim off on the track, along with a mocked up Kim dead body hanging out of Eminem's trunk in the foreground. Of course, the show-stealing track from this album would be Eminem's breakout commercial hit, My Name Is. But once Eminem started becoming a rap game celebrity, it was that shocking track 97 Bonnie and Clyde that people wanted to hear him talk about. Eminem would jokingly explain the song to Howard Stern in a 1999 interview, saying that the song is really about expressing love for his daughter, but at the same time, killing her mother.
You made a song about killing your girlfriend?
Yeah, on the album.
What's up with that?
What's the name of that song?
What's the name of that song?
It's called 97 Bonnie and Clyde. It's a song, it's like a song to my daughter, and I'm talking to her in baby talk, but I'm talking about how I killed her mother.
Oh.
Because we was going through some stuff at the time.
You know, like this little girl's going to go through crap now because of what he's been through.
Yeah,
I don't think so. I don't think so.
I think so.
And now,
Trust me, she will.
honestly,
Trust me.
Right.
I mean, have you ever felt like you wanted to kill somebody? Didn't do it. But yeah, what I was really trying to do was express my love for my daughter. You know what I'm saying? But at the same time, kill her mother.
He'd actually further elaborate on the production of this song in his book Angry Blonde, which broke down the meaning behind some of his most famous songs, ultimately saying that the song was written in the summer of 1997 when Kim was using Haley as a weapon against him and not letting him see her, with M making the song with an intention to get back at Kim and make her look stupid in front of the music-listening public. But Eminem would admit in this book that he truly didn't expect the song to go much further than Kim and maybe a few people in the Detroit rap scene, suggesting that he had no idea that he would get a record deal and that this dark song would go nationwide. But boy, did that song and Eminem's whole album, with a fake dead Kim on the very front cover, take off like nothing else. The Slim Shady LP debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200 albums charts, as well as charting on around 15 other charts internationally. Eminem's hatred of his baby mama was quite literally international news, and ironically, even Dr. Dre himself would say in later interviews that despite spotting the raw talent and wide appeal of Eminem as a rapper, he also acknowledged how crazy some of the twisted bars he had aimed towards his wife were, with Dre literally saying, "If I was her, I would have ran when I heard some of those songs," but also acknowledging the huge inspiration that this manic and toxic relationship provided for some of the most impactful songs of Eminem's career. And funnily enough, after the Slim Shady LP had gone global, Eminem would continue to drag Kim even outside of his own music, with Dr. Dre himself even getting in on the action. Eminem would subsequently appear on Dr. Dre's iconic 2001 album, another international chart hit that landed in the US on Billboard at number 2 and racked up chart entries in over 10 countries. M would appear on the track What's the Difference in a lyrical back and forth with Dr. Dre, where Dre actually offers to help Eminem dump Kim's body in the ocean, with Eminem replying saying that he doesn't need help, and rapping that if he does decide to kill Kim for real, he plans to put her in the front seat of his car with sunglasses on and drive her around California before dumping her out at the local police station. Basically, at this point, saying that you were going to kill Kim was becoming all the rage in the rap game. But for the time being, weirdly, Eminem and Kim would actually reconcile in real life. Because naturally, once the enormous success Eminem was receiving became apparent, Kim would of course be waiting in the wings looking for her slice of the pie too. regardless of how much disrespect Eminem had shown her to get there. According to Debbie's memoir, when Eminem returned from LA as a rap kingpin rather than a useless nobody, Kim was right back on the scene, eager to soak up the glitz and glamour of his newfound stardom, with Debbie claiming that following the enormous success of the Slim Shady LP selling millions of copies, Eminem and Kim were quickly back together and revealing that they would soon be getting married, with an ecstatic Kim proudly declaring that there would be no prenup because they were truly in love. A bold statement, after which Debbie actually claims that behind Eminem's back, Kim would be pretending to puke, but they would indeed tie the knot in a very rushed ceremony in 1999, with Debbie claiming that she herself had even attempted to delay them marrying, but suggesting that Kim had rushed Em to City Hall to seal the deal, with the low-key marriage being confirmed just before closing time. This quickie marriage at City Hall was apparently followed by a small church ceremony for friends and family in June of 1999. However, keeping the marriage together would get harder and harder once Eminem would embark on his Up in Smoke tour along with Dr. Dre and other pop-puffing legends of the rap game, with Eminem seemingly leaving Kim behind in the very trailer that Em and Debbie had lived in before the fame. Now, years later on the song Mockingbird, Eminem would claim that when he went on the road, this is when Kim developed the habit of substance abuse, as his rise to fame was just too fast for her to handle, with Kim later claiming that Eminem did not support her financially during this period.
I still worked for maybe 2.5 years after Marshall got signed because I didn't see really any of the money. I mean, maybe a check every other week for $800, $900, or if I called and said, you know, Haley needs this or I need this, you know, that's the only time I would see anything.
I mean, it doesn't quite add up. She says she didn't get anything from Eminem, apart from the $1,600 a month and anything the baby needed. But Kim would later tell Dr. Keith that she rushed this marriage because she was worried what would happen when Em went off on tour.
He was getting ready to start his first tour, and I think we were both worried about what was going to happen while he was gone, but we just wanted, you know, something more binding. So we did it. We got married. It was exciting. It was small and little and cheesy, and none of my family was there, but it was still, it was exciting. I felt like we really loved each other when we did it.
And it would seem that Kim's fear of infidelity were indeed valid, as indeed Eminem would reportedly cheat on Kim with groupies on the road after his newfound stardom had chicks throwing themselves at him. This infidelity would apparently be detailed extensively in a later memoir called Shady Business by his former bodyguard Byron Williams, aka Big Nas, who looked after Eminem closely during this time on tour, as well as suggesting that sometimes Kim would attend tour dates with Eminem where she would be physically abusive towards him. Kim later suggested that she had genuinely expected Eminem to be faithful to her after their whirlwind marriage and his meteoric rise to fame.
I was hoping that when he went on tour, and because I seen how fast his career was taking off, I was hoping that that would keep him faithful and grounded to me. That was my main goal. His first tours, when our relationship really started to deteriorate, he was cheating on me a lot and drinking and using drugs, and he wasn't home, and it just wasn't good.
And she would eventually elaborate in her Dr. Keith interview, saying that she believed that when Eminem got famous, things fell apart in their relationship because she truly never expected him to succeed.
I never in my wildest dreams expected him to become so famous. His success would completely turn our lives around and just ruin the relationship and the bond that we had and destroy our family.
Going on to say that she believed that Eminem's ego grew massively after that first tour.
Right when Marshall's first tour started is when his ego just went, you know, he was untouchable. Like, he was God. That's what he thought, you know. Every time I talked to him, I wasn't allowed to question him about what was going on. If I did, I was just told that I should be grateful that he still talks to me, you know, how many women throw themselves at him, and I was just pretty much felt like a piece of crap.
Perhaps Eminem was wrong to cheat on Kim on tour, or maybe Kim was just naive to believe that he wouldn't, but it was certainly wrong of them both to rush into this marriage amid such a turbulent time in both of their lives. But considering Kim's vindictive nature, it's no surprise that the way she saw things, two wrongs would make a right. And soon she would be looking to exact revenge on Eminem, using infidelity as her weapon of choice too. But unfortunately for them both, Kim actually ended up getting more than she bargained for. Because Eminem, despite becoming a global megastar by this point, he was after all still Slim Shady deep down, a loose cannon from the mean streets of Detroit. And when he did eventually catch Kim in the act of doing exactly what she had accused him of doing on tour, he would just lose it and go crazy, making a split-second decision that nearly cost him his entire career as well as his freedom. After reaching the heights of global stardom off the back of his studio album The Slim Shady LP, Eminem and Dr. Dre got back into the studio to craft his next masterpiece. And despite having a hit out the gate with his first album, his next album would surpass it in almost every way. And on May the 23rd, 2000, Eminem would release the ultra-personal magnum opus, the Marshall Mathers LP. Of course, his leading single, The Real Slim Shady, was an ode to the violent alter ego that had made him viral before viral was a thing. But elsewhere, the project would have numerous songs and aspects hinting towards his struggles in his personal life. Particularly his single The Way I Am, which had both lyrics discussing how his life had been turned upside down since he became a global celebrity, as well as a music video that depicted Kim leaving him with Hailey and M jumping from a tall building. The Marshall Mathers LP was wall-to-wall with unskippable bangers in my opinion, but for many people, the most emotionally jarring song was yet another track aimed at his long-suffering wife with the pointed title, Kim. An August 2000 Spin magazine interview described the song Kim as a prequel to 97 Bonnie and Clyde, with the track essentially leading into 97 Bonnie and Clyde, which paints the picture of M and Hailey dumping Kim's body into the ocean. Eminem would elaborate on the song in an interview in this very magazine, saying that their 10-year romance had so many ups and downs that this song was simply Eminem putting his aggression about the relationship into his music. And also suggesting that Kim is apparently okay with this, saying that he makes songs about killing her and then goes home to her, but she understands, saying that they're both crazy and even comparing themselves to The Odd Couple. But the lyrics to the song Kim were a bit further than anything you'd expect to see in The Odd Couple. Eminem actually said in a VH1 interview that he heard the aggressive and emotional beat for Kim and imagined her screaming in his face when he wrote the song.
I just pictured her in my face and me being able to scream at her like that and really tell her how I felt.
The song itself captures Eminem's side of an argument with Kim, foreshadowing those events of 97 Bonnie and Clyde, as he yells that Hailey shouldn't see what he's about to do to her, with Eminem shedding light on what it is that would actually drive him to be so angry towards Kim, suggesting that this whole argument took place after he discovered that Kim had been with another man, with this man likely being the new stepdad that Eminem references Hailey having in 97 Bonnie and Clyde, with M ending the first verse saying that they're going for a drive with Hailey sitting up front and Kim in the trunk. Eminem would switch from rapping in the verses to a crooning sung chorus, which creepily sees him saying that he doesn't want to go on living without Kim in his life. As dark and nasty as the subject matter is, the words themselves are painting a picture of a man so deeply in love that he would rather die than be without this woman in his life. And in the second verse, Eminem would ironically open up, admitting his own infidelity, which likely caused Kim to feel comfortable cheating in the first place, but absolving himself of all responsibility, saying he cheated years ago when he was 18 and that he thought they moved past that. And in a lyric that was apparently censored on the publicly released version of the album, Eminem would reference that stepbrother that he inferred suffered the same fate on 97 Bonnie and Clyde, with the shocking lyric painting a picture of a 4-year-old boy dead in Kim's living room. Fictional picture, by the way, YouTube, if you want to get blocking the videos. Anyway, later on the track, Eminem elaborates, attempting to even tell the version of the story that the police might piece together when they discover the murder scene, with Eminem suggesting that when the police arrive, they might think that it was Kim and Eminem fighting over a knife, with Eminem getting his throat cut and the child being taken out as a witness, before suggesting that the police would have thought Kim might have ultimately concluding that he might stage the scene to look like a double murder-suicide that she was responsible for. The song would end with a chilling moment where Eminem screams, "Bleed, bitch, bleed," which we can assume is the moment that this fantasy murder actually takes place in the song. And the very last moment of the track actually ends with the sound of a car trunk being shut. This was of course the very same sound effect that is heard right at the start of the song 97 Bonnie and Clyde that Kim is a prequel for. The song Kim is a chilling track, but once again the way Eminem ties this story together perfectly with his previous murder fantasy anthem, along with details and sound effects that connect the whole narrative together, and along with the fact that the song is a chilling yet emotionally moving snapshot of exactly how Eminem used to feel in these screaming arguments with Kim, just proves how much of an incredible artist he really is. Whether or not you agree with the sentiment behind the song, you can't deny that Eminem was taking rap music to bold, emotional new heights with this track. I would argue that no one has ever attempted anything so emotionally potent in the rap game before or since. And clearly the music listening public at large and Eminem's peers in the rap game were stunned by what he had created. In fact, Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg would say in a documentary about the track that they could not believe what they were hearing the first time that the song Kim was played to them.
I think my jaw hit the ground when I heard that the first time.
They talk about killing his wife. Who don't feel like that sometimes? You know what I'm saying? He just was crazy enough to write a song about it.
Eminem would later reveal in his lyrical breakdown book Angry Blonde that the song Kim had actually been written at the end of 1998, just like the track 97 Bonnie and Clyde, during a period when they had broken up. Apparently Eminem was watching a movie at the time that inspired him to write a bugged out violent love song all about the frustration of this breakup, saying that he wanted to pour his heart out, screaming into the mic and hitting the studio with that original beat, recording this entire horror show in one perfect take. Eminem would also surprisingly reveal that after recording the song Kim, he decided to play this violent scream fest for Kim herself privately before releasing it, even attempting to soften the blow, saying, "I know this is an effed up song, but it shows how much I care about you to even think about you this much and to even put you on a song like this." Twisted. But apparently, he let her listen to the song in his driveway, with a stunned Kim saying that she thought Eminem had truly gone crazy. Kim would later claim in an interview with ABC News that she felt humiliated by this song.
I was embarrassed, I was humiliated, and then I always just wondered what people think of me, you know? He is supposed to be the man that loves me and is supposed to protect me, you know, from being hurt. And here he is, completely and totally disrespecting me in the worst way possible in front of millions of people.
Regardless of her feelings, Eminem said that the song was meant to capture that energy of the kind of arguments that they would have in real life regularly, something he felt was achieved in this finished track. Clearly, Eminem's attempt at taking his artistic expression to bold new levels was a success, as the Marshall Mathers LP, which included the song Kim, along with a slew of other shocking yet skillfully executed tracks, was an enormous success, landing at #1 on the Billboard chart and topping charts in 11 other countries. The album would sell a whopping 1.78 million copies in its first week, eventually being certified diamond in the United States, selling over 11 million copies by 2022. And it went on to become an international all-time best-selling album, moving 25 million copies worldwide, with Eminem himself winning the Best Rap Album Award at the 2001 Grammys.
I guess first of all, I want to thank everybody who could look past the controversy or whatever and see the album for what it was, and also for what it isn't.
So, Eminem had truly made it, and off the back of his ultra-personal rhymes, he became the relatable rap genius who truly spoke for a generation of downtrodden Americans. But perhaps he didn't realize the emotional strain these songs were causing. Because it's one thing dragging your wife in songs that were meant to only be heard by the underground Detroit rap scene, but with a song like Kim, being played in millions of households all across America and the world at large, no doubt had a massive toll on Kim's mental health. And I tell you what, you can take the couple out the trailer park in Detroit, but you can't take the trailer park in Detroit out of the couple. Because no matter how elevated Kim's status got off the back of his art, his heart still belonged to Kim. And she would always manage to drag him back down to rock bottom with all kinds of drama. So, within only a couple of weeks of this groundbreaking release, Eminem would find himself in a parking lot in Detroit, back to his old habits, and behaving nothing like a man who had just sold 1.7 million records. Kim Mathers would later tell Dr. Keith that while Eminem was on tour hooking up with groupies, she was back in Detroit lonely and looking for a way to get back at him.
When Marshall went on tour, I felt lonely, depressed, disgusted with his behavior. Some days I was angry and wanted to hurt him, you know, and some days I just cried all day. It was hard. You know, we had never been apart, and, you know, he made so many promises before he left. You know, he wasn't gonna develop any bad habits, and he wasn't gonna be with any women, no matter how much they threw themselves at him. And it just was the complete opposite. You know, that was my husband, the man that I loved, and he was making me feel like, you know, just another one of his groupies that he, you know, did what he wanted to while he was in that state and just, you know, moved on to the next. I was nothing to him at that time.
Clearly, both Eminem and Kim weren't completely committed to the marriage that they rushed into just before Eminem embarked on his first tour. And eventually, only a few weeks after the release of his hit Marshall Mathers LP, would Eminem end up finding out about one of Kim's efforts to get back at him. And in the early hours of the morning, on June the 4th, 2000, Eminem had gone to the house of his friend Gary Kozlowski in Detroit, apparently upset because he believed that Kim was out with another man that she had been seeing behind his back. So, Gary drove Eminem to a Detroit night spot called the Hot Rock Cafe, waiting with him outside the bar, which they believed Kim was inside with her new lover. This was a man named John Guerrera, who was apparently once a bouncer at that nightclub. Eminem thought that this man was hooking up with his wife and he would wait out in the parking lot, eventually spotting John Guerrera as part of a group of around 3 or 4 people that Kim Mathers had been partying with that night at the Hot Rock Cafe. At around 2 in the morning, Kim would be seen outside the club hugging and kissing her friends goodbye, and it was whilst waiting outside in that parked car that Eminem witnessed Kim kissing John Guerra. At this point, he would fly off the handle, losing his temper and approaching this group with an allegedly unloaded pistol. Guerra later said via his attorney that apparently this kiss was much more of a friendly kiss of goodbye rather than jumping in the back of a car and making out. But years later, in a Sky One interview, he seemed to sing a little bit of a different story, admitting outright that he was making out with Kim.
I was kissing his wife, you know, and I won't apologize for that, ever. You know, why should I? I'm not the one that had pursued her that night, you know. She came to me. If you can't control your wife and keep her happy at home, then don't come to me crying because she did.
Kim would continue to downplay this kiss for years to come, even maintaining in future interviews that it would be stupid to assume that she would cheat on her millionaire husband with a nobody from a bar in plain view. However, Kim's cousin Jenny Watkins later said in an interview that she believed that Kim had indeed stoked the flames in the situation that night.
That was Kim being Kim. Kim goes to the club and Kim flirts with whoever. It doesn't matter if she's married or not.
So you think she was at fault for, inciting what took place?
Oh, I believe so, coming from what Marshall had said and everyone else that was there said. And plus, I've been out with her, I can't even tell you how many times, and had to pull her off of guys.
As Kim and Guerra were embracing, Eminem would approach with that pistol, apparently being noticed by onlookers with people in the crowd shouting, "Gun, gun, gun." Guerra would say that he initially didn't recognize Eminem, who had approached him with the firearm held to one side. Eminem would apparently lift the gun, pointing it in his face only a few inches away.
The guy came around from the front of the van, came over Kim's shoulder with a gun, not even in front of me, and put it right in my face, and I mean, just point blank, and that's when I grabbed it.
With John Guerra later saying that this moment felt like a living nightmare and he feared that Eminem might actually kill him in a blind rage.
And we're sitting there and he's trying to pull it and just tell him, I'm gonna kill you. And I'm like, I don't even know you.
Guerra would slam Eminem against a parked car as a struggle ensued over the gun, with Eminem striking him several times in the head and face.
What the hell are you doing? That's when I spun him around and slammed him on the hood of the car. And that's when I let go of the gun. And that was my big mistake. That's when he started hitting me with the gun. I mean, he just started pounding me he hit me here first, and he kept hitting me back here because I brought my head down to his chest, and then I came up with my head.
Now, Guerra claimed that he was pistol whipped, but Eminem did deny this in court, saying that he had only hit him with a fist, later famously referencing this in the song Sing for the Moment, where he would rap that Guerra was lying and that it was actually a fist that hit him. Eminem also later created the moments leading up to this incident in a skit called The Kiss on the album The Eminem Show. That song was actually followed by a track called Soldier, where Eminem would kind of contradict earlier claims of just hitting Guerrero with a fist, gleefully claiming in lyrics to have been pistol whipping a 6'2" bouncer, as well as repeating his claim of the gun being unloaded, saying who needs bullets when the mere sight of his gun has his victims sweating bullets anyway. But regardless of whether or not the gun was truly loaded, or whether Guerra was hit with a gun or a fist, this physical altercation would continue, as Guerra would claim to have then slammed Eminem's pistol-toting hand onto the car until the gun was dropped, staggering back and only then realizing that that pistol-toting thug who had been attacking him was America's most famous rapper.
Slamming the arm out, and that's when he let go of the gun. And by the time he let go of the gun, I let up on his face. And when I let up on his face, that's when I seen who it was. And before you know it, bam, boom, bam. I'm just actually stumbling backwards. I couldn't believe it. Now I'm in awe because I just seen his face. That is when I realized who it was. That's when I was like, holy shit, that's Eminem. This guy just pulled a gun out on me.
At some point, Eminem was tackled by onlookers, dropping the gun, which was then picked up by his friend Gary, as he would later explain in lyrics on the song Say Goodbye to Hollywood, rapping that he lost sight of the gun and witnessed Gary being rushed by the bouncers. At this point, Guerra fled the scene for his safety, and then the police arrived, with Gary showing police officers the gun, but Eminem fessing up to it being his. They would both be arrested at the scene, and soon after, the media would circulate mugshots of Eminem regarding both this incident and another not long before this where he allegedly brandished the same gun. But things were even more crazy on the scene, because apparently whilst Eminem was being arrested, perhaps as a deflection for her own infidelity that night, Kim herself would begin going off on the police for interfering, getting herself arrested too for disorderly conduct, later claiming that she was attempting to defend him after the incident. Meanwhile, just as a sign of how insane Eminem's level of fame had reached at this point, whilst the cops were trying to get control of the scene, an apparently crazed Eminem fan named Robert Lee Brown would appear and attempt to meddle in the situation, hilariously telling cops that he is in fact the real Slim Shady, ultimately getting himself busted for disturbing the peace and failing to disperse too. This was like a wild scene out of a movie, and it didn't seem like the cops could believe what they were seeing either. In fact, Eminem would later say in a Rolling Stone interview that with this arrest going down at the height of his fame, he would find himself in police bookings being asked for autographs left, right, and center. But this was not an entertaining matter, as Eminem would later reflect on this incident, rapping on the song Say Goodbye to Hollywood that he could not believe that he was headed to jail after just selling 2 million records weeks before, and saying that at the time he was terrified of having to tell his daughter that he was going to jail. And later in his autobiography, The Way I Am, recounting watching the news of his own arrest on TV with his daughter Haley present, and having to explain to her that this was just not the real him. But in the same breath, Eminem would also show no regrets and suggest that he's only human, suggesting that he did what he believed anyone would do in that situation, catching their wife cheating out in public. Sadly, from there, things would only go from bad to worse for Slim Shady, because after the alleged pistol whipping incident, John Guerrera would press charges for assault with a deadly weapon, with Eminem having to appear in court looking very humbled. Now, his strategy for getting out of this jam was a legal defense stressing to the court that the gun was not loaded, and apparently Interscope Records had provided corporate funds to Eminem's hotshot legal team in an attempt to shield their best earner from the worst possible consequences. And this strategy ultimately turned out to be successful, and on February the 14th, 2001, Eminem would accept the lesser charge of possession of a concealed weapon, in a deal that would see prosecutors dropping the more serious assault with a deadly weapon charge. But this was still a serious charge with a potential 5-year sentence that Eminem narrowly avoided. But in the end, he would get off with no jail time and just 2 years probation, along with court-ordered counseling and drug testing.
To give in this matter shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
All right, thank you, sir. You may put your hand down. Sir, what is your name?
Marshall Mathers.
The court therefore feels that justice will be satisfied in this case and the objectives of the court of the law be satisfied by following the probation recommendation. I am going to sentence the defendant to 2 years probation.
Apparently the judge said that he would have to refrain from alcohol and controlled substances unless prescribed by a doctor. And of course, Eminem was ordered to have no contact with John Guerrera. He was also handed a cushy $2,500 fine, a $5,000 bill in court costs, and being told to pay a measly $60 to the local crime victims fund, as well as paying a $30 a month in supervision fees over the course of his probation. Not an insignificant amount of money to the average Joe, but for someone who just sold 2 million records, it's barely a parking ticket, and appeared to be very eager to move past this entire sordid incident.
Glad to be over with. I'm glad to put it behind me and get back to spending time with my little girl, making music.
Clearly, Eminem had taken this lapse in judgment seriously and narrowly avoided harsh legal consequences, later telling Sway in an interview that he truly thought he was going to jail for what he did that day.
Did you honestly feel like you could possibly go to jail?
I'm not gonna front. I thought I was going for a minute.
For a long time?
I didn't know how long, but I thought I was going. If I'm found guilty and I gotta do a prison sentence, what am I gonna face? I thought everything that I worked for could crumble like any day, you know? So that was nerve-wracking, and I'm glad to not have it hanging over my head anymore.
However, not one to miss out on an opportunity to get a little cash out of the incident, John Guerrera would subsequently file a civil lawsuit against Eminem in June of 2000, a suit which accused Eminem of assault and intentional infliction of emotional distress, saying that he had had a hard time sleeping since the beating, with Guerrera elaborating on the pure fear that he felt with the gun stuck in his face in a later interview.
That's scary. I don't care who you are, how big you are, how tough you are. When you get a gun, which is called an equalizer for a reason, you know, it makes a little man and a big man pretty on the same side.
As the media reported at the time of the lawsuit, whilst this was all going on, Eminem was still holding down the top position on the Billboard chart after selling a whopping 2.5 million albums. So perhaps Eminem didn't expect much mercy from a jury that would decide what damages the incident was worth. So Eminem ended up settling out of court, paying John Guerrera a cool $100,000 to make this case go away, with neither Guerrera or Eminem admitting liability as part of the settlement, essentially allowing them both to avoid a courtroom confrontation. And a slightly less humble Eminem would end up boasting victoriously about this on his next album, The Eminem Show, discussing the suit on the track Soldier, where he raps that him and his lawyers get off when judges let him off of serious charges. as well as referring to waltzing into the courtroom happily after being sued for assault. He would of course recreate that conversation that took place in the car with Gary leading up to the beating in the skit called The Kiss on that album, but fortunately for Eminem and Kim, the dust did eventually settle on this awful incident. Clearly, the twisted and toxic love between Eminem and Kim was providing controversy and inspiration that was still fueling Eminem's career, but it was clear to anyone observing that this was an unhealthy relationship. Eminem had narrowly escaped this situation with his freedom intact, and perhaps if he did have bullets in his gun that night, he might be famous for completely different reasons. But sadly, the pressure from this kind of public fallout and Eminem's constant dragging of Kim in his music for millions to hear was becoming a weight too heavy for her to carry. And in the weeks that followed, it would seem that Kim would reach breaking point, helped in no part by Eminem's continued public abuse, which in the end would see their marriage broken completely, with a bitter divorce breaking their family apart and nearly leading Kim to lose her life too. Despite the arguments about Eminem cheating on Kim with groupies on tour, and Eminem pistol whipping any guy that had the nerve to enable Kim's cheating back in Detroit, the Slim Shady show would go on, and Eminem would continue performing dates for the Up in Smoke tour all over America and Canada. And after ticking off around 10 shows from the list in America, and returning from a big Canadian show in Toronto, on July the 6th, Eminem would return back to his home state of Detroit for 2 back-to-back concert shows. Firstly, playing the 20,000 capacity Joe Louis Arena in the heart of downtown Detroit on the 6th, followed by the home of the Detroit Pistons, the Palace of Auburn Hills in Michigan's Oakland County on the 7th, a venue that can host up to 23,000 people. No doubt this was a huge deal for Eminem to return to his home state, rocking 2 enormous stadium venues alongside some of the biggest names in rap. Now, the details of exactly what went down between Eminem and Kim over these 2 days is a little bit blurry, but it's believed that Kim attended one of these concerts in person. The problem is, perhaps she might not have realized what she was walking into. Now, despite what some people think, as far as I'm aware, the song Kim was never actually part of Eminem's tour list during this tour or any tour. Go figure, because the Screaming Murder anthem is a bit of a showstopper and isn't quite in line with the sort of fun, weed-smoking vibes that you would expect from the Up in Smoke tour with Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg. Furthermore, it's unlikely Eminem would have performed this song because he reportedly said in a July 2000 interview that he found this song too emotional to even listen back to. But according to numerous set lists floating around online, Eminem's set would start off with a sequence where he would talk to the crowd in a skit, before launching into another more funky murder anthem which isn't aimed specifically at Kim, titled Kill You. So the question is, what was Eminem's concert intro all about? Well, if you've ever seen the Up in Smoke tour DVD or video, you will know that Eminem famously had a sequence in that show where he would bring out blow-up dolls, telling the crowd that they were members of the Insane Clown Posse, another rap crew who he had beef with.
We got ICP here tonight. We got the Insane Clown here tonight.
Here's the thing though, Eminem didn't always say that that doll was the Insane Clown Posse. This intro actually changed over the course of Eminem's tour. And shout out to the Eminem fan YouTube channel, Rivaleska, for his amazing research on this topic. Because through one of his videos, I was actually able to find out that for the first batch of concert shows, Eminem actually started his set telling the crowd that that blow-up doll was actually Kim, with a rare audio recording of this original intro dissing Kim even being preserved to this day on YouTube.
A lot of you probably have heard or read in the papers that I've been having some little marital problems or whatever with my wife, Kim. But I'm here to tell you tonight that that's all good between me and my wife. Matter of fact, we got my wife. Yo, bring my wife out. Where's Kim? We got Kim here tonight. We got Kim right here. Oh, Me, what the is going on, dog? Hey, yo, give me my dog. God damn.
Well, I'm sure you can imagine that Kim was in a shock when she went to watch Eminem's show in Detroit. Now, it's unclear exactly which of the 2 shows she attended, but if I had to guess, I would assume that she went to the show on the 6th at the Joe Louis Arena, thinking things would be all sweet. Apparently, Eminem had told Kim that he wouldn't be performing that song that night, and indeed, Eminem never did perform the song Kim, but I'm sure you can imagine the shock that she felt when she saw Eminem coming out on stage with the blow-up doll, telling the entire crowd that she was in attendance. And Kim herself would later discuss her shocked and hurt reaction to this incident in numerous interviews. seemingly misremembering and believing that he had performed the song Kim.
I had went with my sister and some friends and had asked him before we went to the show if he was going to perform that song, and he said no. He said no because I know that you're going to be there and I wouldn't do that to you. And sure enough, he decided to do that song and not only perform the song but use blow-up dolls as to reenact like me being choked and just disrespectful things to the blow-up doll, and then threw the doll into the crowd.
One night I was at a concert of Marshall's and he was singing a song that was about me, and he had a blow-up doll up on stage that looked like me, and he was physically beating it and kicking it around and threw it out to the crowd. And just seeing the crowd response and everybody cheering, singing the words and laughing, and it just felt like, you know, everyone was staring at me and knew that it was about me. And that night I went home and I tried to commit.
It's a minor detail, but I think maybe Kim thought that Eminem had performed the song Kim, when he may well have just used the Kim instrumental in the background of that intro where he brought out the blow-up doll. But still, he would diss Kim on stage before launching into the song Kill You, kinda directing that song at Kim. So it has the same effect. I can't even begin to imagine just how crushing and traumatic Kim must have found that experience, being humiliated in front of as many as 20,000 people. Now, Kim herself would claim to have left the venue, crashing her car on the way home, and reportedly trying to take her own life in the aftermath.
And I immediately left after that. You know, I got into a car accident on the way home. I was so upset. And I went upstairs in my bathroom and I ended up in the hospital.
Once again, there have been differing accounts over the years over the exact timeline of events, with Debbie Mathers actually claiming in her memoir that Kim would indeed destroy her wedding ornaments and wind up hurting herself on the night of the performance on Auburn Hills on the 7th. Not saying strictly whether or not she attended that show. In Anthony Bozza's biography, it also suggests that Kim had made this attempt on her life whilst Eminem was still performing at the Joe Louis Arena, but that biography also goes on to kind of contradict itself, saying in another segment that Kim actually did this during the show in Auburn Hills. As I said before, over the years the timeline of this event has become blurred, but I think the most likely explanation was that Kim probably attended the show that was at the Joe Louis Arena on the 6th, and was so shocked at what she saw, she would ultimately flee the venue, returning home and harming herself before that second show had taken place. Because Kim would later suggest in a Channel 955 interview that Eminem actually visited her in hospital following this incident, apparently pleading with her not to make him cancel his next show.
What was his reaction when he found out about that?
He came to the hospital after the show and he said, "I hope you don't expect me to cancel my next show." And left.
That was it?
That was it.
You attempted, and he said, "Don't get in the way of my work. I gotta go."
Yeah, over 300 stitches. I was laying there. They weren't going to release me for 3 days. So, you know, somebody had to stay home with my kids. And that's the only thing he said. Don't expect me to cancel my next show.
Kim's turmoil would make international news headlines, and even BBC News would report on Kim's attempts to take her own life on the 7th of July 2000. And this heartbreaking episode would even later be broken down, perhaps with a slightly blurred timeline in a later VH1 documentary.
On July 7th of 2000, the Up in Smoke tour rolled into M's hometown of Detroit. Kim Mathers attended the show.
Like, I know you guys heard a lot of things about, you know, me and my wife, and, you know, we're having these problems, but my wife Kim is here. And I mean, the crowd was like, oh, yeah. You know, and then he comes out with the blow-up doll, and it went from, you know, claps to ahs and explosions.
Later that evening, months of anger and tension came to a head. She went home and...
The following month, Kim would actually sue Eminem for emotional distress as a result of his song Kim, seeking $10 million in damages and attempting to block Eminem from rapping about her. Now, this is perhaps why Eminem changed the intro of his concert set list, instead referring to the blow-up dolls as members of the Insane Clown Posse rather than Kim, with a theory floating around on Reddit suggesting that after the Kim incident and subsequent lawsuit, that this had essentially blocked Eminem from performing or broadcasting the original show sequence dissing Kim. Now, this was truly the final straw in Eminem and Kim's relationship. At this point, Eminem was being sued by both the man he pistol whipped for kissing his wife and his own wife for the hurtful things that he had said about her in front of tens of thousands of people. And at this point, it's truly hard to imagine this relationship going anywhere other than the divorce court. And so, in the summer of 2000, just 1 month after the onstage performance of Kim and Kim's breakdown that left her hospitalized, Eminem would file for divorce. just 2 months after their first wedding anniversary. Debbie Mathers said in her memoir that she believed Eminem had filed for the separation not entirely seriously, but in the hopes that it would calm her down. And apparently this worked for a little bit, with Kim and Em even reconciling for all of just a few days, before Kim would apparently catch Em by surprise, hitting back and filing divorce papers of her own, with Debbie apparently claiming that Kim called her, telling her that she was serious about ending the marriage this time, and saying that she planned to take her newly minted millionaire son to the cleaners financially due to them not having a prenup. Debbie claimed that Eminem was left broken-hearted about his split from Kim, suggesting that despite the fame giving him a chance to get any woman in the world, the only one he truly wanted now didn't want him back. And it was truly over. Kim herself would later admit to Dr. Keith that she knew the relationship couldn't be repaired due to the rampant infidelity on both sides.
Our marriage failed because I was unfaithful and he was unfaithful. It just, at that point in time, that we really didn't have anything in common. He had went one way and I went a different way.
The divorce filings were followed by a bitter custody battle. Em wanted full custody of Haley as well as Kim's niece Lainey, who he would formally adopt due to her own mother struggling to care for her due to a battle with substance abuse. But Eminem apparently feared losing both of his children in court due to Kim's spiteful attempts at gaining full custody. Debbie would claim that Kim had asked the court for $2,740 a week in child support, a mansion, and still holding out for $10 million in damages for defaming her relating to the song Kim. Clearly, all the drama and media scrutiny regarding the lowest and most private tragedies of him and Kim's private life was truly getting to Eminem, and this would be reflected in his lyrics. In the midst of the legal battles, Eminem would make an appearance on the track Don't Approach Me by Ride Pimper Exhibit on his December 2000 project Restless, rapping about his desperate attempts to hold on to his private life, juxtaposing that with imagery of his wife Kim holding a knife as he tries to calm her down, as well as lamenting on his loss of privacy, saying that even in the worst of times for his family, the local news were following ambulances out of the house after Kim's suicide attempt. He would also drop lyrics suggesting that Kim's attempts to harm herself were the direct result of his feud with John Guerrera in that parking lot of the Hot Rock Cafe. No doubt this was the most challenging time in Eminem's life since he'd been in a trailer battling to see his daughter all those years before fame, with Eminem later claiming in a Rolling Stone interview that divorce was the hardest thing he had ever gone through. He struggled because he knew Kim all of his life, growing up with her as his first true love, and ultimately blaming himself and his career for her not wanting to stay with him. But Em would ultimately conclude that it wasn't his fault and that there was nothing he really could have done to save the marriage at this point. And they would eventually reach an outcome that would be somewhat acceptable to both sides, because by the next year, in March 2001, Eminem and Kim would officially be declared divorced, with Kim seemingly accepting the complete breakdown of the marriage with no likelihood of preservation, with it being suggested that at this point the split was no longer even contentious. By March the 20th, the divorce would be agreed and the pair would split for the first time, completely and legally, with Debbie claiming in her biography that she believed that the judge had kinda sided with Eminem, awarding Kim a much more humble $1,000 a week in child support, with Eminem keeping the home that he had bought for them both worth $450,000 and writing her a check for $475,000 to buy herself a new home, along with an undisclosed sum to settle the damages for his song Kim, with that settlement later being revealed by Kim's cousin Jenny as a whopping $6 million.
He paid her what, like $6 million or something like that?
Right.
It,
By the way, that's not been out public too many places, so
that's how much she got that?
Right.
But perhaps most importantly to Eminem himself, he was awarded joint custody of his daughter Haley. The failure of Kim to achieve full custody was apparently the result of her having an arrest for possession of cocaine, along with 2 drunk driving convictions. Ironically, Kim would later reveal in an interview that despite the rocky divorce, her and Eminem would continue to maintain an on-again, off-again casual relationship, with Kim moving to a home nearby, all the while her struggles with substance abuse were brewing.
After our first divorce, I moved not far from where he was living, and I don't know, we did our own things basically, you know, but we were still seeing each other off and on, you know. Sometimes we were serious, sometimes it was just, you know, comfortable casual sex. And then I developed a severe problem with drugs and alcohol. Got arrested for possession, drunk driving, and then, I don't know, just I was incarcerated, I did rehab.
And unfortunately, during these difficult times, Kim would claim that Eminem was beginning to face the same issues with substances too.
I slowly started to realize like he had a lot of the same behavior that I had when I was going through an addiction problem, and I was constantly questioning him about it, and it just started fights.
So the marriage between Eminem and Kim had come completely to a close. but this toxic entanglement between these two would continue behind the scenes, and unfortunately, substances would become a bigger and bigger part of both of their lives. But for the time being, Eminem would continue his career as a single man, and for the next few years, despite on-again and off-again flings with Kim, he would continue to be a roaring success, continuing to pour the pain that he felt in his personal life into his music for millions to enjoy and be entertained by. And of course, all the while, Kim would be there on the sidelines, with her life falling apart and Eminem eventually having to step away from music to pick up the pieces, all for the sake of his most true love and inspiration, his daughter Haley. Clearly, marriage hadn't been Eminem's strong suit. He was quoted in a Rolling Stone interview in 2002 saying, "I would rather be on an effing coach flight with NSYNC at the back of the plane in the last row, in them seats that don't go back, just stuck there with the bathroom out of order. I would rather have a baby through my penis than get married again. I can't take what I went through last year. I don't ever want to experience that again." And he would also open up about his struggles with the divorce in a 2002 Sway interview, saying that his world collapsed when Kim finally decided to walk away from the marriage.
How difficult was the divorce? This is a woman that I've known since she was 14 years old. We started dating at like 16. I've known this woman all my life, and she's leaving. With that and the combination of everything that was going on around me, my world was like...
But following the pair's split, Eminem would press on with his booming rap career, releasing his iconic third full-length project, The Eminem Show, on May 26, 2002. And this project was laced with references to his personal life and relationships. The skit The Kiss saw Eminem recreating those very moments leading up to that pistol whipping incident, with M later telling Sway that he decided to recreate this incident as entertainment because the reality of his life in that moment was far from entertaining.
I had to put a little twist on it to make it entertaining because God knows it wasn't entertaining that night.
His diss track towards his mother, Cleaning Out My Closet, also saw him addressing Kim briefly too, as he would rap that he would always try and keep things together in his marriage for the sake of his daughter, suggesting that he had truly tried to make things work with Kim, as well as referencing the John Guerra incident, suggesting that he was smart not to put bullets in the gun because he believed had he had the gun loaded that night, he might have killed both Kim and Guerra. Now, another track on the album, Superman, would see Eminem reflecting on his dealings with women at large, ambiguously discussing his relationships with Kim and beyond, with the hook of the song positioning him as the Superman that comes to save women, but ending that hook with a twist seemingly saying that after Eminem comes to save the women's day, he ends up driving them crazy and they end up making him want to be sick. A slick double entendre that could describe both the toxic on and off again relationship with Kim, as well as Eminem's negative and regretful experiences pursuing groupies on the road. He would start the verse rapping that he's newly single after the divorce, and suggesting that this time around, he's not planning to let women bring him down. He would infer that since the divorce, he has been much more disrespectful towards women, and even alluding to a much reported on fling with singer Mariah Carey. At the end of the second verse, Eminem drops a string of lyrics that seem to refer to his jealous nature, referencing following women around bars and trying to catch them out in their lies, even questioning if he can ever trust women again, with this clearly being a reference to following Kim around to a bar and catching her kissing John Guerra. In the third verse, Eminem reenacts a conversation between himself and a new lover as the woman notices the grisly Kim Rot in Pieces tattoo on his stomach, with him telling the woman that they won't ever know the real thing, perhaps suggesting that only Kim really does. Elsewhere on the Eminem Show, he would discuss not being able to juggle his career and the relationship with Kim on the track Say Goodbye to Hollywood, rapping that he thought he had it all figured out when he got famous, and suggesting that he thought he was tough enough to stick it out with Kim, juggling the fame and the relationship, but it turned out he was not, reflecting that it was this failure to keep it all together, culminating in his arrest after that pistol whipping incident. M goes on to rap that that incident, catching his wife cheating at the bar and catching an assault charge afterwards, should have been enough for him to leave the relationship then, suggesting that he fooled himself in thinking that Kim would have been there for him at his lowest point, with M in the second verse revealing that at some point he'd considered taking a whole bottle of pills to end it all, but suggesting that his daughter is the only thing stopping him from doing the worst to himself. He would rap that he's done with firearms for good after the pistol whipping incident, and he would also diss Kim on another track, Till I Collapse, where he would reference her addiction, saying that she is addicted to drugs. Also, on the track Soldier, he would reference Kim's infidelity again in incredibly disrespectful terms, as well as elaborating on the parking lot assault, openly admitting that he pistol whipped a bouncer, and saying that he doesn't need bullets in his gun to make bullies sweat. Even referencing the location of that crime specifically, saying that he had people calling the cops and running out of the Hot Rocks parking lot. The Eminem Show was another huge smash hit for Eminem, debuting at #1 on the Billboard charts and spending a ridiculous 429 weeks on the chart in total. The album would sell around 3 million copies in its first month of release, going on to be yet another worldwide bestseller. The Eminem Show went diamond in the United States, moving over 12 million copies to date, and going #1 in 17 other countries. And of course, this effort would once again win Eminem the Grammy Award for Best Rap Album. And this time around, he would use his award speech to thank the other rappers who inspired him to create such incredible music.
Run DMC, the Beastie Boys, LL Cool J, Cool G Rap, Master Ace, Rakim, Big Daddy Kane, Dr. Dre, all the NWA, KRS-One, Tretch from Naughty by Nature, Nas, Tupac, Biggie, Jay-Z, thank you, because I learned from all of you.
At this point, Eminem had dropped 3 classic rap albums back to back, cementing himself as one of, if not the greatest lyricist who had ever picked up a microphone. But as we know, he was far from done. But his next big achievement would take place not in front of a microphone, but instead in front of a camera, when in 2000, Eminem would make his autobiographical blockbuster movie, 8 Mile. The movie would be a loosely fictionalized version of Eminem's come-up in the Detroit battle rap scene, essentially documenting the journey of how he became the battle-hardened MC that he is today. But the movie would stop short of depicting his leap to fame as Eminem. The film itself would showcase his life in the gritty streets of Detroit's trailer trash slums, as well as even dramatizing aspects of his tumultuous relationship with Kim, with Eminem's love interest in the movie played by Brittany Murphy, who Eminem would ironically repeatedly have a brief on-set romance with. This was seemingly a very Hollywood love affair, whereby Eminem for a brief moment would get to play out this fantasy of reconciling with Kim, or at least the actor that played her, with Brittany Murphy actually discussing her brief relationship with Eminem in a David Letterman interview that was included in a film about her life, covering her experience working with Eminem.
So she was nervous. I mean, that was a big role for her, working across a huge artist. It can start to put pressure on you to where you might just even fold. I really like the first time they make out in the factory, she went all the way. She's had a lot of courage on action, any type of inhibitions just went away.
Was there romance off the screen?
Yeah, sure.
How did that go?
Well, it came went. It's fascinating to know that the on-screen chemistry also was going off the screen. And
now, the film 8 Mile wasn't exactly a glowing reflection of Kim's role in Eminem's come-up. It included scenes where Eminem's love interest would be caught in the act of cheating, a scene which Kim herself actually denied ever happened in real life.
Well, there was a scene where basically it was he found you in a compromising situation with another man inside a radio station studio or a music studio, whatever. It was supposed to be one of his good friends. How true is that, or was that just something else he just made up in his artistic mind?
That never happened. Never. I've never been with any of his friends, or I've never even been to a radio station.
With Kim herself actually later claiming that she had refused to watch the movie, as well as suggesting that a lot of what ended up on the screen was completely untrue.
Now, in the movie 8 Mile, once again, he portrayed you in a real negative light.
I've never seen that movie.
Oh, you've never seen the movie 8 Mile?
Nope.
Well, just to give you a little update, I'm shocked you've never seen the movie 8 Mile.
I choose not to see it.
You refuse to see it?
Yeah, I just don't want to see it. I heard half of that movie never happened. I don't know. He never stayed in a trailer park off 8 Mile. I don't know where all that came from.
Loosely based on his life.
But despite Kim not buying a ticket, 8 Mile was yet another huge success in Eminem's career catalogue. The movie would gross over $50 million at opening and close to $250 million worldwide. And Eminem would win himself yet another shiny statue for his music in this film, this time the Oscar for Best Song for the motivating global anthem Lose Yourself, an Oscar that he didn't even bother collecting.
And the Oscar goes to... Woo! The Oscar goes to Eminem, Jeff Bass, and Luis Resto for Lose Yourself from 8 Mile.
At this point, it's really hard to imagine Eminem failing at anything. But behind all the success, he was continuing to struggle in his personal life, with Kim and the people surrounding her continuing to drag him into a dark place. The month before the debut of 8 Mile, in October the 17th, 2002, Kim's cousin Jenny and former nanny to Haley would appear for an interview on Channel 955 radio. She would be there to promote a tell-all book that she had written about Eminem, giving fans a further insight into his toxic relationship with Kim, suggesting that the abusive parenting that both Kim and Em had endured had led to them repeating this in their own relationship.
Of course, everyone knows that his and Kim's relationship is kind of twisted, but no one really kind of gets some kind of insight into it as to why they keep going back together like I do.
What's the reasoning?
Marshall, my theory is that Marshall's grown up with some kind of low self-esteem, and from what his accounts are, verbal abuse and physical abuse. And I believe anybody will tell you that when you're growing up and you're used to that kind of treatment, that's what you consider to be normal. And Kim fits that mold perfectly. She was verbally abused growing up, and she's a very abusive person.
So she abuses him?
Yes. What you hear in the songs and everything, that is not Marshall Mathers. That might be what's inside of him, all his anger built up.
Right.
But you never see that on a daily basis come out of Marshall. Never. And Kim and him, they bring out the worst in each other. They bring out the devil in each other. And it's a love-hate relationship. When it's good, and you see them, they look cute together. But when it's bad, it's just terrible.
Jenny would suggest that at this point, Eminem and Kim only spoke to each other for the sake of their daughter, Haley.
When's the last time you think that that Eminem and Kim talked with each other? Do they talk on a regular basis because of Haley?
The last time, well, always because of Haley. And even when they weren't on good terms, they would talk over Haley, and she would call and be nasty, and she'd call, I was there, and he'd hang up the phone. And I remember one instance he'd say, Kim, I'm not going to talk to you until you can talk to me with respect. And he'd hang up the phone, and she'd call back, and he says, Kim, say it. I'll say it with you. Marshall, I have respect for you. And he'd hang up the phone on her. And he gets her goat, and she gets his, and it's just, and it just, it explodes most of the time. And poor Haley's caught in the middle.
And she would even suggest that Eminem had struggled to cope with fame and really just wished that he was still a normal person.
You saw some of the decadence that took place in this guy's life. I mean, you saw Marshall from the stages of being pretty much nothing to now being on top of the world.
Right, and I've seen him go from, he didn't really handle success very well in the beginning, and even now he handles it on the surface, but underneath he still wishes he was like you and I, an everyday person. He can't go into a store or a restaurant, and he really misses it.
Shockingly, she would reveal that Kim had two major problems: addiction, seemingly to both drugs and men.
Her motto is, I don't give a F, and
right.
she'll say that she doesn't care where she's at, she just does whatever she wants to do. So I would say it was a tie between her cocaine addiction and her sleeping around all the time. She just has a huge sexual appetite. And
are these guys that are just regular guys that are hanging out at the club, or are these guys that are famous people that you or I would know?
Kim really doesn't have a taste for famous people. She wants to lead an everyday life, and she says she never wanted to be famous because she likes to be wild and crazy and be able to get away with all that stuff.
Well, apparently one of these men was a man named Eric Carter, whom Kim would briefly shack up with, getting pregnant and giving birth to another child named Whitney. A child that the big-hearted Eminem would actually adopt many years later. However, at the time of inception, Eminem wasn't so open-minded. Perhaps due to the fact that he still had feelings in his heart for Kim, or possibly due to the fact that Eric Carter was a known drug dealer wanted by the city of Detroit for narcotics-related charges. There would even be some speculation suggesting that Kim had pushed so hard for financial support in their divorce because she knew she had a baby on the way by a man wanted on drug charges. Apparently, according to Debbie, Eminem was livid when he discovered that the father of Kim's new baby was a convicted drug dealer, suggesting that M didn't want Carter anywhere near his daughter with Kim, Haley, with Eminem even later expressing his personal sorrow over this situation in lyrics on his song I Love You More, where he would say that Kim having a child with another man and giving Haley a half-sister that's not even related to Eminem would leave their family mixed up with pieces of the puzzle that don't fit together, as well as also expressing his hurt over this situation in a Rolling Stone interview where he said that he was dreading explaining to Haley why her baby sister wouldn't be allowed in their home. However, Kim would later deny this initial turbulence, suggesting that Eminem had welcomed her new child into the family like his own the whole time.
Kim, when you guys broke up the first time, didn't you have a child with someone else?
Yeah, I have a child, a daughter by another man. Yeah.
Was Eminem okay with that? Did he treat that daughter the same way as Haley?
Yeah, he treated her the same. He don't see her now. Now that we've been divorced, he hasn't seen her. But while we were together, yeah, he treated her with love and respect.
In the end, Eminem's reservations about Eric Carter would indeed be proven to have merit, as Carter would eventually be found dead in an abandoned house in Detroit in 2019 due to a drug overdose. According to Debbie, only 6 months after giving birth to that drug dealer's kid, Kim would go crawling back to Eminem. And according to Anthony Bozza's biography of Eminem, Kim had apparently recovered from childbirth at the home that Eminem had bought her after the divorce. And by 2003, people would speculate that they were once again getting back together, with Eminem's grandmother apparently telling a newspaper that despite high-profile media flings with the likes of Mariah Carey and Brittany Murphy, that Eminem and Kim were indeed back together, happily. And from here, reports would begin to surface of Em and Kim being seen together at gigs and industry events all around Detroit in early 2003. However, there would still be turbulence in this reunion brewing all the way through 2003. Apparently the problem started when rapper Ja Rule dissed Kim and Hailey on his track Loose Change, where he would call out Kim for being promiscuous and suggesting savagely that Hailey would grow up to be the same. Now Eminem would clap back and even include a vocal recording of Hailey on an April 2003 Ja Rule diss track, Hailey's Revenge. So with all of this going on, it was actually reported that Kim was allegedly furious at Eminem dragging her and Hailey into this rap beef with Ja Rule that had been inherited from 50 Cent, with it apparently being believed that Kim was upset and felt that Eminem had actually endangered her and her daughter's lives by making them the target of supposed gangster rappers. And by September 2003, it seemed that the former Odd Couples reunion was far from serious. Kim was seemingly out here in these streets with other men, and the same could be said about Eminem, as M would make a guest appearance on Obi Trice's September 2003 album Cheers on the track Lady, a classic Eminem appearance warning women not to get involved with him due to his crazy and violent nature. And in the verse of the song, Eminem would admit that he's still a bachelor, but suggesting openly that he still has occasional booty calls with Kim. So clearly the relationship wasn't entirely serious at this point. But unfortunately for Eminem, Kim would be out in the streets getting herself into serious trouble. As on June the 10th, 2003, Kim would be pulled over in her Cadillac Escalade by police in St. Clair Shores, where Kim had apparently been observed driving erratically near 12 Mile Road, with the police ultimately finding 2 bags of cocaine in her car and charging her with possession of under 25 grams of blow and failing to give way to an emergency vehicle, with an iconic Kim Mathers mugshot circulating in the media following the arrest. Kim would accept responsibility for the dope, pleading guilty and receiving probation, later even revealing in a phone-in interview that at the time she was relieved that the cops picked her up, suggesting that for a moment she thought that all the madness of her life was going to be over.
The big part of it, when I was using, me and Marshall weren't together. I left. So I wasn't with him. I had a cocaine addiction and alcohol addiction.
How scared were you when you got pulled over by the police and they found, drugs in your Escalade at the time?
I was crapping my pants. I was very scared, but at the same time, I guess I was relieved.
Did you think it was over for you? Did you think you were going to jail and you were going to lose your daughter? And
yeah, I did. I thought all kinds of things.
However, sadly, her problems were far from over, and ultimately, Kim's actions would affect much more than just herself. According to Debbie's memoirs, whilst Kim was dealing with these legal troubles, Eminem would take a hurried private jet back to Detroit off of a tour to file a motion asking a judge to grant him full custody of Hailey whilst Kim battled her charges and her addictions. And despite Kim's apparent relief after being caught by the cops and placed on probation, at the time it seemed clear that Kim wasn't quite ready to keep her nose clean. Only a few months later, on September the 29th, 2003, Kim would apparently throw a party at Warren's Candlewood Suite Hotel, which was raided by cops who accused her of running a drug house, after she apparently admitted to the cops that the room was in her name and that the guests had taken numerous illegal substances. And from here, things would only get worse for Kim, as she would go on the run, skipping court on November the 7th, provoking 2 arrest warrants. And after failing to show at court, Eminem was indeed granted the temporary full custody he had been seeking to keep his daughter Hailey safe from Kim's reckless behavior, later saying dramatically in a Rolling Stone interview that with Kim on the run from the cops, he had no choice but to step up to the plate and be there for his daughter and niece. Now, Kim would apparently resurface on November the 19th, posting $53,000 bail and being put on an ankle monitor, as well as being subjected to court-ordered drink and drug counseling, essentially managing to finesse her way out of a long jail sentence, getting off with just a fine, an ankle monitor, 2 years probation, and regular drug testing, with this tidy plea bargain being accepted on December the 19th, 2003. But Kim wasn't done wiling out just yet. She would struggle to stick to the terms of the plea she had agreed, eventually being sent to jail the following year on February the 6th, 2004, after failing a urine test and admitting cocaine use to her probation officer. Kim would do nearly a month in jail before dropping out of a court-ordered drug treatment program, at this point apparently hacking off her ankle monitor and going on the run once again with an open warrant issued in April 2004. But Kim would eventually be recognized and tracked down by cops at the Weber Inn Hotel in Ann Arbor, where she would be arrested on June the 15th, 2004 after attempting to dupe cops, giving them the fake name Julie like a true outlaw. On June the 30th, 2004, Kim Mathers was sentenced to a full year in jail for leaving a court-ordered drug treatment program without permission, ultimately being offered the opportunity to serve the first 140 days behind bars before being released back into a drug rehabilitation program in Hazel Park. At this point, the stakes were high, because if Kim could abide by the rules, her remaining jail time would be suspended and she would be put back on probation. But if she didn't complete rehab this time, she would be facing a fresh year in jail. But ultimately, Kim would go to rehab, begrudgingly leaving the kids in Eminem's custody, as she would later admit in an ABC News interview about this time in her life.
You said you went into rehab and you were away from the kids, and at that point, where did the kids end up? How did the kids end up?
The kids were with Marshall, and
he had full custody.
He had, full custody of the kids.
Many years later, on the track Bad Husband, Eminem would actually open up about the period that Kim was incarcerated and away at the court-ordered rehab, rapping that both him and Kaylee would wait around for prison letters and phone calls from Kim during this dark time in their lives. And in a November 2004 Rolling Stone interview, Eminem would discuss the situation, saying that explaining Kim's jail time to his daughters was the hardest thing that he had ever had to go through, seemingly topping the devastating low of his previous divorce from Kim. But Kim would eventually return home, with Eminem suggesting in October 2004 that after her release, their relationship at that point was neutral at best. But he would also admit that he'd still struggle to move on from her, suggesting that he could not fall in love again. In his Rolling Stone interview, Eminem ended saying that she's now out of jail and rehab, and that he's hoping they all stay clean. However, Eminem would struggle to stay clean himself, and the next few years of his life would sadly be characterized by erratic battles with addiction, as he would struggle to stay inspired and keep his career together, eventually being forced to take a dramatic break from the limelight. Eminem's 2004 sequel to The Eminem Show, Encore, would release on the 12th of November 2004. The album had a fascinating concept that seemed to suggest that Eminem was ready to step away from the spotlight. The album itself was meant to serve as the final encore after the Eminem Show was over, with the front cover of the album showing Eminem bowing out from his career on a stage. But the reverse image of that photo was found in the booklet that revealed that behind his back, Eminem was holding a gun. The disc of the album itself had an artwork that was meant to depict a handwritten suicide note by Eminem apologizing and saying goodbye to his family. And a selection of photos in the album booklet would depict Eminem opening fire on his own audience once the show ends. This was yet another classic Slim Shady murder fantasy that appeared to not only hint at Eminem bowing out of the rap game, but also painted a picture of a man that had grown tired of fame and was ready to turn his back or his gun on those same adoring fans that would gather to see him perform. And of course, the project included numerous tracks where he would elaborate on his relationship with Kim, for better or for worse. He had the song Crazy in Love, all about the difficulties of two crazy people being in love, as is the situation he had with Kim, with lyrics where he claims that she makes him a sick maniac, with raps that compared their love to schizophrenia, as well as echoing earlier tracks with violent sentiments towards her, suggesting that one minute he wants to kill her, and the next he wants to make love. He would compare Kim to his mother Debbie, and even reference domestic violence, suggesting that he had hit her that day, but saying she deserved it because she hit him first and provoked him to choke her, as well as saying that she lets him beat her while he lets her beat him. But it's not all negativity on the track. Elsewhere, Eminem would rap that he admires that she is as crazy as him, saying that he is attracted to her freaky side. In the second verse of the song, Eminem would open by acknowledging how much musical inspiration he gets from this toxic relationship, saying outright that if it wasn't for her, he wouldn't be able to rap, before truly wearing his heart on his sleeve and admitting that he has to convince Kim that he doesn't need her so that she doesn't use his dependency on her against him, saying quite literally, if you ever leave me, he'd have no reason to be, and calling her the Slim to his Shady and as important to his career as Dr. Dre. Even rapping that she never took half of his money and that she never divorced him, perhaps hinting towards the breakup being his decision originally. However, not all of the content on Encore aimed at Kim would be so complimentary. He would also have the song Puke that struck a much more negative tone. Puke was a hurtful and juvenile track aimed all towards Kim, with lyrics all about how he vomits every time he thinks of her, going into great detail how much he regrets numerous past tattoos of her name, as well as referencing her battles with addiction, even claiming, perhaps unconvincingly, that he doesn't want her back, and pledging to move on because of how sick the thought of her makes him at this point. The album Encore also included his moving track Mockingbird, where Eminem raps in a letter directly to his daughters, Haley, as well as adopted niece-in-law Lainey. Mockingbird is an introspective track where Eminem reflects on his relationship with his kids and failed marriage to Kim. with lyrics acknowledging how hard it must be for Hailey to constantly see her mother in and out of the news for negative reasons, and her father leaving the family home on tour, ultimately admitting to his daughter that he never planned for him and Kim's relationship to go so sour, suggesting that at this point he doesn't ever see them being back together again. He would also tell a redeeming story about Kim, saying that when he was too broke to buy Christmas presents for Hailey, saying that Kim told Hailey that some of the gifts under the tree were actually from Daddy, despite Eminem not having any of the money to pay for gifts. He would also have lines that reference Mummy being gone for the moment, a possible reference to this song being written during Kim's stint in jail or rehab. Another Kim-focused track, which was a bonus track on Encore, was the song I Love You More. And in this song, rather than dissing Kim, M tries to give a much more insightful account of the inner workings of their relationship. In the hook, he would say that the more she put him through, the more it made him want to go back to her. He would also make several references to physical violence between them, and he raps that they say they keep getting together for their child's sake, but suggesting that that's not really the reason, with the track line after line going into great detail about this toxic obsession that Eminem and Kim seem to have for each other. It would detail infidelity on both sides of the relationship, with Eminem suggesting that perhaps the reason they continue to repeat this cycle over and over again is due to them both feeling upstaged about having lost each other to a competing partner, with Eminem going as far as to compliment Kim's performance in bed, suggesting that even if he ran off with another woman, he couldn't find somebody as soft and warm as her. Eminem would also drop bars in the song suggesting that their on and off relationship will likely end up spanning from their first meeting in junior high until they both eventually die. But sadly for Eminem, an unexpected brush with death would only be a few years away, all stemming from the addiction issues that he had been brewing in the background for the last few years. Because in August 2005, Eminem would return home after completing his Anger Management 3 tour, being treated for exhaustion and undisclosed medical issues, with these later being revealed as an addiction to the sleeping pill Ambien, with Eminem telling Rolling Stone in a 2011 interview that he picked up the habit on the set of 8 Mile after apparently struggling to get quality sleep after so many grueling shoot days, as well as admitting that when his probation for the John Guerra beating came to a close, he no longer had to do drug tests and begun indulging in substances every single night. So, to try and overcome his newfound pill habit, he too would check into a rehab clinic, later admitting to relapsing as soon as he checked out, with fans getting nervous and rumors circulating that he might never perform live again. Combine this with the worrying sentiment behind his last album, Encore, it truly felt for a moment that hip-hop might just be a hair away from losing its most iconic personality. In lieu of another official album, while Eminem battled his demons rather than recording new material, in December 2005, he would release his greatest hits compilation album, Curtain Call. This was a project Eminem openly said was potentially his last release, saying ominously in an interview around the time of the album coming out that he didn't know where his career was going and that this indeed could be the final thing for him. This project would include Eminem's biggest songs of his career, as well as 3 brand new tracks, one of which was the moving song When I'm Gone. This is an emotional track reflecting on the role he plays in his daughter's life. Quite literally, a goodbye song to his family as if he was speaking to them from the grave after his death, telling them on the song that he's looking down on them smiling and that he didn't feel any pain, telling them not to cry for him but to rejoice every time they hear his music. Honestly, it's a tearjerker of a song, and in the context of this track being released whilst Eminem was taking time away from music to battle his addictions, with the true potential that he could have genuinely passed away any day, it's hard not to feel that emotional gut punch when you listen to this track. Elsewhere on the song, Eminem reflects mournfully on being dismissive of his daughter in favour of his career, pondering from the afterlife if he was focused on the wrong things during the little time that he had on this earth. He would say that he felt shame for ignoring his daughter in real life and then going and recording songs talking about how much he loved her, as well as expressing shame that he would ever assault the mother of his child Hailey, who herself bears Kim's resemblance. On the song, Eminem would recall a chilling, recurring nightmare where he says that his daughter would scream at him not to make music anymore, asking him why her mother is crying so much. He would go on to remember times that he had told his daughter that he wouldn't be leaving home to go on tour again, only to go back on that promise, going on to describe a heartbreaking scene where Hailey would apparently try and block Eminem from leaving the home. Eminem would later break down the lyrics in a phone-in interview, saying just how much guilt he felt leaving his family to go on tour so many times.
I don't know if you heard the song, the new song that I have, but it talks about the guilt of always having to leave, you know, and at the time was mainly Hailey that it was affecting. You know, literally the things that I say in the song about the her giving me the coin and, you know, putting boxes in front of the door to try to block it, you know, to try to stop me from leaving. Those things really happened. And I'm at a point in my life right now where I feel like I don't know where my career is going. This song is like basically what, you know, the guilt that I've had to deal with from leaving, because I hated leaving my family, like, you know, leaving my home for the stage, you know, which I realized that I had to do, and it's my second passion, you know, is to be out there in front of people and you know, just rap in front of that many people and the crowds I draw and stuff. But you got to decide, like, you got to sit there and just figure out what's more important. And right now, there's nothing more important than my family.
As the song goes on, Eminem details a heartbreaking recurring thought that he had whilst performing on stage, imagining looking into the crowd and seeing his daughter Haley crying that Kim was bleeding, and imagining that Haley would ask him why he lied about leaving the family to go on tour, with Eminem rapping that he would try and placate his daughter, saying that he would leave the stage behind with her and Kim, but Haley would reply saying that he's made his choice now, showing that he loves the crowd more than his own family. He would go on to say that the screaming fans and regret over leaving his family in this dream is the direct cause of his addiction to sleeping pills. And Eminem ends the track with another incredible and moving piece of songwriting, describing the scene from the Encore album cover art, saying that as the curtain closed on him, he put the gun to his head and shot, effectively killing not himself, but the alter ego Slim Shady that got him into this mess. Ending the track by rapping that when he effectively takes this decision to kill his dark side Slim Shady, he then wakes up at home with his family around him, kissing Kim. He's essentially saying both that killing Slim Shady is what allowed him to get his family back together, as well as suggesting that his idea of a true heaven is simply waking up at home with his daughter and Kim. And the music video for When I'm Gone even featured a dramatized setup of these final lyrics where Eminem fantasized about this heavenly family life with Kim and the kids, with this music video apparently being filmed only days after Eminem had checked out of rehab. The song When I'm Gone is so powerful, it really can bring a tear to your eye by just even reading the lyrics. And no doubt when Kim and Haley heard this track, they must have been moved too. In fact, it would actually turn out that this song was possibly so moving that it would lead Kim and Eminem themselves to reconcile and attempt to get back together for good. And in the following months, it would emerge that Eminem and Kim weren't just back together, but fully intending to remarry, trying to live the dream that Eminem had described in When I'm Gone. And they would get into this union with the best of intentions. But sadly, as seemed to be the case throughout the entire cursed history of their romance, this reunion would be short-lived, and the euphoria of reconnecting would soon be dashed by yet another devastating and embarrassing fallout, which unfortunately would drive Eminem to the brink himself. In 2005, Eminem would check in with the Detroit radio station Mojo in the Morning, giving them an update and admitting that he indeed went into rehab to get clean.
I actually, you know, when I went into rehab, I kind of went into it like with the notion of I'm gonna get clean. I'm gonna get off this stuff before it gets too out of hand. You know, I want to nip it in the bud.
With Eminem later telling the New York Times that he had struggled in these scenarios, suggesting that he felt uncomfortable being a high-profile celebrity in rehab, with fellow addicts apparently stealing his clothes and constantly asking for autographs. So at this point, both Eminem and Kim had done their time in rehabilitation facilities, and for the time being, doing their best to kick their addictions. According to the lyrics of Eminem's later track Bad Husband, witnessing Kim pull herself together in rehab motivated him to consider giving the relationship another try, with Kim later explaining that after rehab, Eminem asked Kim to stay with him and spend more time with the kids, with this closer attempt at co-parenting soon turning into a 2-year live-in relationship.
I came home from being incarcerated in rehab, and he had asked me to stay a few nights at the house so I could be with the kids, and a few nights turned into a few weeks to a year. So I was home actually 2 years before, a year and a half, almost 2 years before we got married.
Kim would later claim that when Eminem returned from his own stint in rehab in December 2005, he actually proposed to Kim.
After Marshall completed his rehab and came home, he had asked me to marry him, and I said yes, but I thought we were going to wait. I thought we were going to wait a while before, we got married. He asked in December. With
Eminem eventually revealing in a Mojo in the Morning interview on 95.5 Detroit that they had indeed reconciled and they were planning to remarry.
My wife, Kim, she is like the biggest, she's waiting in line to get him.
I want to stop for a second. You just said my wife, Kim. Are you and Kim back together?
Yes, we are back together.
That's good.
And We have reconciled and are probably going to remarry.
Wow.
That's great.
What would be your plans for that? What would be would you guys do it somewhere special here in town or go somewhere special away?
Well, you know, the first time we got married, there was like 3 people there. There was like the lady who married us, and I can't remember who else was there. But
plus, you didn't have any money back then.
Flower girl, and you know, this time with everything that we've been through, I mean, oh my God, it's been a roller coaster, and you know, I mean, I'm sure people get an idea of the story.
Sure.
You know, it's like a back and forth relationship, and there's so many people that have those. We just happen to be in the spotlight a little bit.
But she's the one that loved you before you became famous. That's a bond you can never find with anybody else.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you want to count, like, I mean, off and on or whatever, regardless of the fact, you know, we basically been together for 17 years.
She loved you when you were broke.
Yes, she did.
Eminem was truly trying to do right by his family, welcoming Kim home with open arms and attempting to get a handle on his own problems, reconciling with Kim in an attempt to provide a stable home for his biological and adopted daughters. Kim would later claim that while she was excited and happy about this reunion, she still thought that Eminem was rushing things.
I was excited, I was happy, but at the same time I thought he was rushing things a little, you know.
And apparently, things weren't quite a Cinderella tale in the Mathers household, with Kim apparently claiming that Eminem had given her a firm ultimatum on the remarriage, telling Kim, if you can't commit to a wedding date now, then it's never happening.
And he said, pick a date, and I said, well, let's just wait, you know, does it have to be right away? And he said, you can pick a date now, and if you don't know now that you want to get married, then you're never going to know, then you can just move out. So I really didn't even want to get married this time.
With Kim ultimately coming away from this ultimatum, feeling she had been rushed into things.
It was rushed, and I didn't want to get married. He had said pick a date, and I said, well, let's wait a while. And he basically said, you know, you either know now and we can set the date, or, you know, you can just take your stuff and go, because if you don't know right now that you still want to be with me, then you're never going to know.
Kim later said in an interview that she felt their relationship had this pattern of the pair connecting and enjoying at most 2 good years together before everything fell apart.
Because usually, I don't know, in our relationship, there's a pattern, like we'll have 2 good years and then it will go bad for some reason. It's like a 2-year max with us.
But perhaps both Kim and Eminem felt that this time would be different. So they went ahead with things, and they would get married for the second time on January the 14th, 2006, around their 15-year anniversary. With all this still going ahead, despite Kim apparently being apprehensive, later claiming to have unsuccessfully pleaded with M to consider not even making the marriage official until they had spent more time together.
We decided on January 14th, Marshall wanted to do it because it was our 15th year, you know, together from our original day we first started going out. And even on that day, I said, let's just, you know, go through with the ceremony but not sign the marriage license, because I was just afraid that, you know, what would happen if we had to go through a divorce, our kids.
This ultimately didn't make a difference, and the naive lovers would push on with their nuptials. The event itself would apparently be a wholesome wedding ceremony, which Kim even claimed herself to have enjoyed at the time.
I had the big dress and all of our family and friends, and the kids read, and they were all beautiful. I mean, he had our kids read at the wedding, you know? It was gorgeous. It was beautiful. I loved it. I loved every minute of it.
Kicking things off with a wedding invitation that would invite guests to come along and celebrate Kim and Marshall's new life together. They would even reuse the vows from their failed first marriage, which was perhaps a bad omen. And Eminem's long-suffering mother Debbie was not invited to the wedding, which was perhaps a good sign. Eminem's early friend, D12 bandmate and mentor Proof was actually the best man at the wedding, but according to Debbie's book, Proof was actually reluctant to be involved, having seen firsthand the turmoil that Kim had caused in M's life. But apparently Eminem was more concerned with attempting to reunite the parental household for their 10-year-old daughter Haley. Despite not being invited, Debbie would recount details of the wedding that she had heard from friends in her biography, saying that Kim was wearing a white dress and that regular collaborator Louise Resto would play Mockingbird on the piano as M walked down the aisle. And apparently the event took place in one of the premier venues for Detroit's upper class, the lavish Meadowbrook Hall in Rochester Hills, which has been described as the Downton Abbey of Detroit. This 1,200 square foot, 110-room estate was once home to the widow of Detroit motoring pioneer John Dodge. This was a testament to just how far Eminem had come in his career. a Detroit legend worthy of marrying in one of the most lavish locations that the state of Michigan had to offer. The Detroit Free Press's Brian McCullum reported on the festivities, calling it a quietly dignified occasion, with guests apparently describing it as a classy and intimate affair. However, Debbie Mathers would later claim that the peace of this low-key union was punctured by Kim's family, who she alleged actually sold details about the wedding to the media, despite the desire of the couple to keep things secret like their first marriage. Later, a Hello magazine cover picture from the wedding would shock fans who couldn't believe that after all of the feuding, this toxic duo had reunited so publicly, with this picture apparently even being one of the first public appearances for Kim in years. Kim looked beautiful, and the wedding was clearly a beautiful day for the entire Mathers family. However, sadly, that peace wouldn't last for long. According to Kim, immediately after they got married again, problems would become immediately present in the relationship, with Kim later claiming that Eminem had left the family home on February the 25th, 2006, which is only around 40 days after the wedding took place, with this falling out apparently coming as the result of a disagreement between Kim and Eminem's brother Nathan.
Yeah, he left our home February 25th. He actually physically left the home. There was a disagreement between me and his brother.
About what?
Inappropriate behavior that his brother had, yes, and that's what it was. And then the next morning, there was a note in the bathroom that said, "I'm going to the other house, I need to clear my head."
This was apparently an argument about a birthday party, but no further details have ever been released to the public.
I mean, we've been through infidelity, rehabs, cheating, beating each other up, everything, and then we got into an argument about a birthday party, and he left.
Kim later told Miss Jones in the Morning on a Hot 97 interview that after this strange fallout, M left a note on the bathroom sink telling Kim that he needed to get away from her before he did something stupid and that he would be staying in another house.
He left a note on the bathroom sink saying he needed to go to the other house and clear his head before he did something stupid. And then I didn't talk to him again until the attorney showed up at the door.
Kim would claim that from here on, M would essentially ghost the marriage, completely refusing to answer her calls and spending months in another home.
He didn't even come around for a month after that. Like, he didn't come see the kids, he wasn't calling me, he didn't return phone calls. I didn't know what the heck was going on. And then his attorney's assistant comes to the door and serves me papers.
Did he break your heart?
Yeah, this time he did.
And then 41 days later, February 25th, Marshall left.
However, Debbie's memoir would paint a slightly different picture, suggesting that it was Kim that disappeared in March, with Eminem being unable to track her down. Now, we know that Kim isn't always the most reliable narrator on things, and she does have a slightly spiteful streak when it comes to attempting to control the relationship, with Kim's version of events putting her entirely in the right, perhaps a little too good to be true, with Kim even going as far as to make the absurd suggestion in her Dr. Keith interview that perhaps Eminem had only gone through with the marriage to promote his music.
It just seems as if, he used me, maybe to, I know he's putting out another album and he's movies are in the works, maybe use me so that people will look at him and go, here he goes again with this crazy broad, what is he going to say this time about her, or what did she do this time to him, and I don't know, I just don't know why he did it.
I think it's pretty unlikely that Eminem would put himself through this disaster just to promote his music. He doesn't need the promotion, especially when you consider that he had essentially concluded his career with his greatest hits album that literally depicted him bowing out of the rap game. In fact, it seems much more likely that Eminem had simply idealized this perfect picture that he imagined when he ended the song When I'm Gone with the scenario of being back together with Haley and Kim. Ultimately, it probably came as a shock to him after going through with this marriage he pushed so hard for, and finding himself struggling with the same difficult Kim that he had dealt with back in that trailer in 1995, with Eminem ultimately conceding that this attempt to reconcile and bring the family together had been one big, expensive, and humiliating mistake. BBC News would report of Eminem filing for divorce on the 6th of April 2006, with divorce papers apparently filed only 82 days after the wedding. The media would circulate courtroom pictures showing Eminem and Kim and their respective lawyers appearing in the courtroom trying to settle the divorce, with a sullen Eminem looking completely broken-hearted and tired. Eminem's lawyers would explain why this didn't work out in the divorce papers, stating plainly there has been a breakdown in the marriage relationship to the extent that the objects of matrimony have been destroyed, and there remains no reasonable likelihood that the marriage can be preserved. Conversely, Kim's lawyers would put out a statement suggesting that the divorce came as a surprise to her, but ultimately suggesting that Kim would indeed have to deal with this unfortunate fact and the marriage would go ahead and be terminated. And ironically, the judge that oversaw this divorce would be the very same judge that had presided over the case of Eminem pistol whipping John Guerra for kissing Kim in the parking lot all those years ago. I can't imagine what went through his head when he got that divorce case through on his desk, honestly. But regardless, the judge would admit that the couple had conducted themselves with dignity and respect, with this divorce being amicably finalized and custody of the children being agreed to be shared by Eminem and Kim. However, despite the judge patting Eminem and Kim on the back for keeping their composure and dignity in the courtroom, that would unfortunately not be the case when Kim got out of court. Because the following year, in February 2007, Kim would go on a media tour in an attempt to seize the narrative regarding her divorce. Ultimately, Kim would blame Eminem's enormous fame in the rap game for the turbulence in their marriage.
It just seems like ever since he's got, famous, blew up, our relationship went downhill from there,
Ironically, she would also claim that Eminem got big-headed. But in a way, her mask kind of slipped in this interview, as Kim actually revealed that in this late stage in their relationship, she still refused to see Eminem as anything more than the man he was when she met him in a trailer park in Detroit. With this perhaps going some way to explain why he didn't feel happy or valued staying in this relationship.
He's so used to getting so much attention, people praising him for his work, that he expects that when he comes home, and it's not the same. I don't look at him like that,
Kim would also brush aside her own affairs with other men as contributing to the failure of the relationship, saying simply that she wanted affection from somebody else and refusing to take responsibility for sabotaging the union.
I just really wanted attention and love from somebody, I was lonely and I didn't have very good self-esteem, We both had our moments of infidelity. I can't even count on one hand, both hands how many times he's done it. But I'm not out there, publicly humiliating him and putting all of his faults out there for the whole world to criticize him over.
Following that ABC News appearance, on February the 16th, 2007, Kim would then check in with TV's Dr. Keith to elaborate further on her relationship with Eminem.
Eminem's ex-wife. People really don't know who the woman behind the headlines really is. Breaks her silence.
It just seems as if he used me.
And shares her heartbreak.
Today we're going to hear from two people who say their lives were changed completely when they became household names. Our first guest, Kim Mathers, became famous simply because her megastar ex-husband Eminem chose to write about her in his songs. But since then, the media's followed her every move and past mistakes. Take a look. During Eminem's rise to fame and the whirlwind that followed, one woman was the constant in his life. Kim Mathers met Eminem when she was only 14, and their daughter Haley was born just 5 years later. Next came the years of drama, infidelity, arrests, suicide attempts, drugs, and custody battles. They even got married and divorced, not once, but twice. And through it all, Kim has remained silent.
And even in this appearance, Dr. Keith himself would reveal that Kim knew Eminem would never forgive her for even appearing in this tell-all interview, suggesting that she had only decided to do this now after the second divorce because there was clearly no chance of the two reconciling.
We asked Kim why she kept silent for so long, and she said, look, over the years, she and Eminem, they were on and off. She knew if she spoke out, he'd be very upset with her. She worried he might never forgive her. It was a chance that she wasn't willing to take, but now she realized they're not getting back together, and here's what she had to say.
I've decided to come forward and speak up because of the way that I believe that the world or people in general view me, because of the things that have been said about me by Marshall on record and in print.
Ironically, Kim would claim that her motivation for the interview itself would be to set the record straight and tell the world she isn't the bad woman that Eminem portrayed her as in the music.
Kim feels that Marshall, as she calls Eminem, has unfairly portrayed her in his songs, and the media only focuses on the negative aspects of her life.
People think that I am not a good mother, that I was not a good wife, that I'm loose and easy, promiscuous, that I'm a drug addict and an alcoholic, and I have had problems with addiction, but, I haven't used in over 2.5 years, so you won't see my name in the paper. Another year goes by and Kim hasn't used. But the minute I make a mistake, it's everywhere.
But she would go on to refuse to take a shred of responsibility for the failings in their relationship, repeatedly blaming Eminem and his fame for all of their problems and misfortune, as if somehow Eminem's talent and subsequent success was some kind of infliction on her, ignoring the fact that she had actively tried to sabotage him and his passion for music from the very start of their relationship, as well as overlooking the fact that when Eminem's success became apparent, she was the one rushing him into that first marriage. Throughout the interview, Kim would complain about the way Eminem portrayed her in his lyrics, without sparing a single thought to how her behavior towards him over the years might have impacted his mental state, or even driven him to reflect so negatively towards her in his lyrics.
I believe that maybe Marshall uses his
private life a lot of times, and he'll only put the negative of his private life out there, you know, maybe to get a pity trip or sympathy from people, or maybe it's just his way of therapy. I'm not sure why he does it, but I'm tired of hearing about it, really.
Kim would also make a very bold claim in this interview, saying that she believed that M was taking out his anger towards his mother Debbie on her throughout the relationship.
I don't think he knows how to treat women, because he wasn't treated well by his mother and he had a lot of anger towards her. I think I hate to say that he looked at me like his mom, but, you know, or viewed me like that, but he just never had a loving relationship, you know, with a woman growing up. And I think anytime that we got into a disagreement or an argument, he might have just had visions of his mom or something, or I don't know, treated me the way that he wanted to treat his mom growing up, you know, or maybe he just picks some people that he knows can't pick back at him. I'm not really sure.
It's an interesting theory, but once again, it's just another device to place all of the blame for the failure of the marriage on Eminem himself, when there was clearly damage done by both parties. Kim would claim at the end of her Dr. Keith interview that she knows she's made mistakes, but suggesting she's grown from them, but stopping short of getting into any detail whatsoever.
I want the world to know that I realize that I made, you know, mistakes. And I can't hide them, you know, I mean, they're out there, but that I've learned from them, and that I've grown, you know, and that I'm a wonderful, caring mom, and, you know, I just don't want people to pass judgment as soon as they see me or hear my name.
I found these interviews kind of strange to watch. Kim really wants people to believe that she's a wonderful person and mother, but she hasn't done anything to atone for her behavior in the relationship. She never seems to reflect on her own behavior and what she might have contributed to the toxic fallout of this relationship. You never hear any suggestion that she tried to help or support Eminem in his career, and you never hear Kim say that she tried to do anything of her own or seek her own opportunities in life. You know, outside of a drug den in a hotel room perhaps. It's all just her complaining about how Eminem's fame ruined their life and how the money he sent was never enough. Sure, Eminem did say a lot of hurtful things about Kim in public, and that was ultimately wrong. And despite having his own infidelities, addiction problems, and admitting physical abuse towards Kim, he still appears to have wanted to give a better life to Kim and Hailey from the very start of his career, as was reflected in those lyrics in his 1996 project Infinite. From the very start, Eminem had pushed to make something of himself and give his family a route out of the slums of Detroit. And even after all of the drama, he went to rehab and attempted to reconcile with Kim, inviting her back into his life despite all of the toxicity. So despite her playing the victim in interviews and acting dumbfounded, suggesting that she had no idea why Eminem would ghost her 40 days into their second marriage, it seemed clear that in some way there was an inability to get on with Eminem's brother Nathan that played a major role in the collapse of their second marriage. Clearly, Eminem wasn't happy about Kim's media tour dragging him publicly after their divorce, but she would simply keep on turning the knife in more and more childish ways. After the Dr. Keith interview, Kim would appear on a Channel 955 radio interview, where she suggested she wasn't even happy with the way she was portrayed by Dr. Keith, once again passing the blame for how she'd come across so negatively in previous interviews, suggesting that the person responsible for making her look bad was actually the woman interviewing her for Dr. Keith's show, suggesting that she had asked her leading questions.
You know what's so weird about that Dr. Keith Abloh show? That was... My attorney called me and said that they wanted to do like a pre-interview thing, come out here, you know, ask a few questions, tape it, and then if I liked the way it felt, if I wanted to do it, I could fly out to New York and finish, you know, and tape an interview. I never even met Dr. Keith Abloh. I didn't like the way that it was going. Like the girl that was doing it, like kept stopping me and like leading me to say, you know, different answers. And so I never even went out to New York to finish the interview. I don't even know how they're airing it.
It's honestly surprising how little self-awareness Kim has. I mean, she couldn't even fathom that it's simply her actions and words that led to her appearances on those interviews being received negatively, choosing instead to find anyone else to blame, in this case the interviewer, for people perceiving her so badly for how she was behaving. And even in this interview, after all of the complaining she did about how unfair it was for Eminem to drag her publicly in songs, or perhaps even as a direct retaliation for all of those hurtful lyrics Eminem had aimed at her over the course of his career, Kim would continue to disparage Eminem's character in interviews over and over again, saying simply that he is a horrible person and that he gets worse every day.
What is your relationship like right now with Marshall?
I only talk to him for the kids. I can't stand him.
Really?
He's an absolutely horrible person. He gets worse every day.
Does he intentionally be mean to you, or he's just...
He's mean to me. His relationship with the kids has went downhill. I don't know, honestly, since he's left the house in February, I don't know what he's doing or what, but he's just... his visits are few and far, between, and when he does come around, it's nothing positive. I do not like him, even as a person anymore.
I'm telling you.
Even though you don't like him, you still love him.
Ironically, she would reveal that Eminem had even told her that very morning how hurtful it would be for the family for her to go on air and drag him.
And it's so funny, he sent me a text yesterday because he must have heard that was going on here, and he was like, I don't believe that you're going to go on air and talk about me. It's very embarrassing to our family, and, you must have no respect for the kids. And I'm like, hello, have you listened to any of the songs that you've said? I don't know.
Funnily enough, that would be followed by Kim begrudgingly showing a shred of gratitude that Eminem had indeed continued to support the family financially despite all of the negativity she was putting out.
So, Kim, what about financially? Marshall did help, or did take care of you financially?
Marshall does. Marshall pays for child support, and he is very financially, thank God for... Yeah, he does his part as far as the financials.
And she would go on to echo Eminem's lyrics in the song Puke right back at him, saying that she vomits in her mouth every time she hears his name, and even saying he was bad in bed.
That's why I never spoke up about him before, because I always felt something for him. If I talked to him, if I looked at him, if I was around him, I just felt it. And now I vomit in my mouth whenever I'm around him or I hear his name or anything. There's nothing left in me for him.
What's the one thing that would surprise us about being married to Eminem?
Sex was bad? I don't know.
Why was it bad?
No, get out of here.
He's not very well endowed, and if you're going to have sex with Marshall, make sure you have a little blue pill, because otherwise it does not work.
Kim?
What?
I don't know why they
You realize that you're a parent with this guy. You realize that you still have a kid with him. You shouldn't be saying
You just
this.
took his microphone away.
How is this good for the kids, for you coming on the radio with us today?
How's it good for the kids?
Because we know they're big fans of our show, and
they're not listening, are they?
Their friends listen.
No, they're here with me. They're in the other room doing their hair and eating McDonald's.
Okay.
They'll probably hear about it, though.
Yeah, and, they've heard about his song. So
Yeah.
I finally got to say something to defend myself once.
As time went on, Kim would continue to do interviews trashing Eminem and opening up about their time together, including a March 26, 2007 interview with Miss Jones on Hot 97, where she claimed that he was acting like a little girl for being upset about her doing these interviews. With all this, despite an apparent court order that supposedly forced them not to trash each other in front of the kids.
How many songs, how many interviews has he done about me? I mean, in most of his interviews to begin with, he's complaining about freedom of speech and how people want to censor him. And now I say I do a couple interviews, and he's crying like a little girl.
Right.
I never, not once, went to a court trying to get him to not say nothing about me.
Now I got a report that it says that y'all agreed to not say anything on both sides, so that's not true. That's something that his people said.
And we signed, first of all, it's a parental order that the judge has. It's like, I guess he gives it to all couples that are having problems. It's already drawn up. There was nothing special made for our case. And it basically says that we'll try to promote parenting time with the other parent and not speak bad about each other to the kids or while the kids are present. And I agreed to sign it, right off the get. Marshall had a problem. He didn't even show up in court. We had to contact him by phone. It was such a big deal. He wasn't even there. And then I guess he was complaining, saying that he's going to try to appeal it.
Anywho, Kim's Get Back radio tour would indeed continue. In the Miss Jones interview, Kim would also claim that she was single and on the dating market once again, but suggesting that it was a bit of a struggle for her to date due to her notoriety and reputation.
Have you moved on romantically? Are you dating again?
I've been on a few dates. Nothing serious or nothing, but I mean, trying to anyways. It's hard,
Right.
I got my name out there, and I don't know who to trust, and it's hard to date after you've been married to somebody famous.
No doubt, Eminem was completely devastated at what was going on, not just at the failure of his second marriage and inability to reunite the family, but also at Kim subsequently humiliating him in front of the whole world. Sure, he'd done it to her previously in his music, but he had seemingly tried to put that in the past, shelving his Slim Shady persona and stepping away from the limelight in an attempt to become a family man. But this attempt had ultimately failed spectacularly. But that wasn't all Eminem was dealing with at the time, because all of these challenges would have to be combined with the devastating death of his beloved day one best friend Proof, with Eminem finding himself a completely broken man, losing everything dear to him within the space of a few months. And with all of that weight on his shoulders, it's really no wonder that he would slip back into his old habits, allowing addiction to take hold. And over the next few years, Eminem would truly fight for his life, with a pill-popping habit ultimately being the only thing he could rely on to numb the pain, a habit that he would narrowly survive, fortunately overcoming addiction and eventually returning to the rap game triumphant as a completely changed man. In the wake of Eminem and Kim's failed remarriage, Eminem would fall into a pit of despair, not just losing his wife and family unit, but also losing his close friend Proof in an April 2006 shooting whilst the divorce proceedings were still pending, with Eminem later admitting in interviews that he felt the death of Proof gave him permission to self-medicate with whatever drugs he wanted. Kim would actually even claim in an interview that she had attempted to be there for M while he was going through the loss of Proof, but he apparently refused to communicate with her during this period.
You know, I'm sure that was very overwhelming for him. I even tried to be there for him when that happened. It just, I don't know. I couldn't reach him, but he was gone, like physically and mentally and emotionally before that happened with Proof.
This was clearly the hardest battle that Eminem had faced in his whole life, and I don't doubt that both of his divorces were nothing in comparison to losing his best friend that had supported him into the rap game from day one. Despite struggling with grief and addiction behind the scenes, and officially having taken a break from his solo career, what little music Eminem was still involved in during this time was still hugely successful. His September 2006 feature on Akon's Smack That, which he also wrote and produced, was another Billboard #2 hit, charting in countries all over the world, and getting another Grammy nomination. And even though Eminem's solo career was on hold through 2005 to 2009, he was still trying to help his close friends and collaborators establish their careers, releasing the Billboard #2 charting Shady Records Re-Up compilation, a project which no doubt meant a lot to Eminem and his crew D12, with Proof having been involved in the early days of the project, sadly passing away during its production. And Eminem would also be highly active on the business side of things, with the highly publicized launch of his Sirius radio station, Shade 45. But sadly, despite racking up career wins whilst his solo career was still on hold, behind the scenes, Eminem would continue to battle with a severe addiction to prescription drugs, which had even apparently been ongoing throughout his attempted remarriage to Kim. In her February 2007 interview with Channel 955, Kim did seem to hint that Eminem had struggled to maintain his sobriety, with Kim actually hinting that things hadn't been as picture perfect as Eminem might have presented to the public during their reunion, with Kim actually claiming to have found pills on the set of the When I'm Gone music video.
I've heard things on the recording end side. I haven't heard anything on the family side, but do you feel, unfortunately, that he might be slipping into an old lifestyle that might be a little dangerous for him?
He never stopped his old lifestyle.
Oh, really?
Wow.
Oh, really?
So he's back to pre-rehab
Let me
habits?
tell you, the When I'm Gone video,
Really?
me and Haley were supposed to be in that, and let's just say I found some things on the video that probably shouldn't have been there, and that's why we weren't in the actual video.
Was he even clean when he was at rehab?
I don't think so.
According to Kim, she and Haley were actually even supposed to play themselves in the music video, but she would storm off the set after finding that Eminem was still using drugs.
Was it true that the reason why you and your daughter Haley were not in that video, I forget the name of the song, but there was a video that you were supposed to be
When
in.
I'm Gone?
When I'm Gone.
Yeah.
It's because when you got to the video set, you saw he was back to his drugging.
No, I know he was. I went upstairs in our bedroom to change clothes, and his pants were up there. And I just happened to go in the pockets, and lo and behold, there was, one of his problem pills, a pocket full of them. So we just left.
When you say problem pills, what can you be a little more detailed on what type of pill we're talking about?
One of his pills that he had just got out of rehab. 3 days prior to that video shoot for?
Right.
So perhaps Eminem had not been quite as clean as he wanted the public to believe during this period. Combining that with the loss of Proof and the finalization of his second divorce, M ultimately gave himself free rein to use any substances he could to separate himself from his emotions. With this in mind, it was only a matter of time before this reckless behavior would eventually catch up with him. Kim would confirm that Eminem was using drugs, going as far as to say that she believed he had disconnected with reality.
I don't know what he's doing. I don't know, if he's... Well, I'm not going to say if he is using drugs. I'm sure that there's something going on there, but he's just not the same person that he was. Over the past year, he's just, I don't know, he's disconnected with family and, reality, really.
Yeah.
I don't even talk to him.
Do you think that the pills he takes helps him be as creative as he is?
I hope that's why he's taking them. I don't know.
Clearly Eminem was in a dark place with the prescriptions, even admitting to Rolling Stone in 2011 that at his worst he was taking as many as 60 prescription pills a day, and later telling the New York Times that he would begin taking whatever pills his dealer could get hold of, eventually unknowingly taking methadone. And ultimately, in December 2007, Eminem would overdose on methadone, famously saying that he was only 2 hours away from death, with doctors narrowly saving him from an early grave. After this incident, he would check into rehab once again, being brokenhearted about missing Christmas and Hailey's birthday, lying to the world saying that he was suffering from pneumonia, as he would later reveal on the song Deja Vu, which discussed the incident. Many years later, Eminem would open up about this challenging period of his life during a speech he gave when he was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, saying simply that at the time he found drugs too delicious, but he screwed up and took too many.
Almost died from an overdose in 2007 because drugs were fucking delicious. And I thought we had a good thing going, man, but I'm like, I had to go and fuck it all up and take too many.
Eminem would finally get clean in April 2008 and has since apparently maintained that sobriety for more than 14 years, regularly sharing tokens of his recovery to Twitter. And the newly clean Eminem going forward would recalibrate his relationship with Kim in seemingly much more healthy and positive ways. On the 20th of November 2008, Eminem would release his graphic biography with Sasha Jenkins titled The Way I Am, suggesting in this book that him and Kim had put the unpleasantness in the past, saying that they were now seamlessly co-parenting Hailey separately but as friends, and revealing at this point that the kids were splitting their time between Eminem and Kim's households. However, Eminem's mother would be less forgiving in her feelings towards Kim and the relationship, because the same month as Eminem's book coming out, Debbie Mathers would release her tell-all memoir, My Son Marshall, My Son Eminem, setting the record straight, My Life as Eminem's Mother. This was a book which saw Debbie candidly spilling the beans on personal insights into her life raising Eminem, and her experience being intertwined with the many dramas of his celebrity lifestyle. In the book, she would touch on a huge range of topics from his personal life, far beyond his relationship with Kim. And her clashes with Kim would form a central part of this book, hence why I've mentioned it so many times in this video. Now, Debbie would dramatically conclude the relationship with Kim in the book, saying that the biggest regret of her life was taking Kim into her household like her own daughter. She would write in the book, "My biggest regret is taking Kim in. In the beginning, I thought everything would be wonderful. She was the daughter I always wanted. I had so many plans and dreams and hopes for her. I figured we would be one big happy family, but it wasn't to be. In my opinion, Kim destroyed everything, and I wish to God I'd never let her through my front door. That girl destroyed Marshall. If she had been nice, it would have been different. MTV once said that he had destroyed the two women that loved him most. That's Kim and me. But as far as I'm concerned, Kim destroyed Marshall and me." It's a damning statement, but one that's hard not to believe. And whilst Debbie is naturally always going to be an unreliable narrator of the Eminem story, especially considering her own battles with drug addiction and a natural desire to paint her in a much better light than Eminem painted her in, setting that aside, apart from Eminem himself, who only really opened up in his life in tidbits of his music, Debbie's accounts of the relationship are probably as close as we're going to get to an objective outside view on Eminem and Kim's toxic relationship from the start. And despite all of the cruel words Em had for Kim and Debbie over the years, it's hard to come away from this as seeing Kim as anything other than a toxic narcissist who was hell-bent on ruining Eminem's life from the start. But ironically, there was nothing Kim could ever do that was enough to derail Eminem's pure talent. Little did she know when she met that skinny white rapper in the rough part of Detroit that she wanted to control, that she had actually quite literally met the greatest musician of a generation. Her world-class levels of toxicity and manipulation were truly no match for the raw talent of the lyrical rap god. Eminem truly beat the odds in every single way, whether it's poverty, reverse racism, the trappings of fame and addiction, even after 2 divorces and the loss of his day one best friend Proof, a lifetime of abuse from his mother, and a drug-addled overdose that nearly claimed his life, Eminem was able to overcome everything that was placed in front of him. So, at this point in the story, there would only be one move left for him: to return to music, coming back stronger than ever, releasing #1 album after #1 album, despite all of the troubles that he had been through. And with his next project, his battles with addiction would play the central role, with Eminem ultimately reviving his Slim Shady persona and doing what he does best, giving the world a deep but entertaining insight into the painful battles that he had been going through for the past few years. After overcoming the second divorce and his addiction challenges, Eminem would get back into the studio, channeling everything he had been through over the past few years into his music, releasing his next studio album, Relapse, on May the 15th, 2009. With the title of this album being another slick double entendre, referring to both Eminem's relapse into addiction that he experienced in the years leading up to his overdose, as well as an artistic relapse, with the project essentially reviving his rap career and the Slim Shady persona who he said he killed on his last publicly released song, When I'm Gone. And Eminem's experiences battling with addiction would form a central theme of this project. The cover art was adorned with an image of Eminem's face made up of miscellaneous pills, with the title card of the project being a prescription label, and he would elaborate on his experience getting clean off the drugs throughout the project, particularly on the track Deja Vu, where he would open up in great detail about his addiction and overdose, even recreating the 911 call from that very night. With the Relapse album, Eminem proved to the world that he could still make quality music without the pills, and his fans were delighted to have him back in the studio. Relapse would debut at #1 on Billboard, becoming the best-selling rap album of 2009. And what with all the renewed attention around Eminem, who had triumphantly returned to public life at this point, naturally, people would still be wondering, what was the situation with Kim? Then, a year later in 2010, a rumor would circulate that Eminem and Kim were seeing each other again, and possibly even expecting another child. However, Eminem would deny these reports in a statement that confirmed that him and Kim were not romantically reunited in any way, but stating that he was instead just maintaining a friendly relationship with her. It seemed that while the Relapse album allowed Eminem to get a lot of the demons surrounding his addiction off his chest, there wasn't much discussion of his relationships or ex-wife. But this would change dramatically on his next project, as later in 2010, Eminem would drop the hit single Love the Way You Lie featuring Rihanna, a song from his next album released on June 18th, 2010, titled Recovery. Obviously a concept album that would discuss Eminem's road to recovery following his relapse. But the song Love the Way You Lie, in a way, is an attempt by Eminem to recover from and reflect on the role that he played in the abusive relationship with Kim. The song featured lyrics where he reflected on their failed reunion, rapping bars that would compare the highs of their love to drink and drug abuse, musing on their on and off again relationships, saying that she loves when she hates him, as well as saying that they're constantly getting stuck in a cycle of leaving each other and then winning each other back, saying that when it's good and he feels like Superman, but when it's bad, it's awful and he doesn't even recognize himself. Even openly expressing shame for getting physical with Kim on occasion. With this being not only a big admission for Eminem, this makes the collaboration with Rihanna, who is singing on the hook of the song, much more impactful when you consider her past violent relationship with Chris Brown. Eminem goes on to rap line after line of emotionally impactful and introspective bars about his toxic relationship with Kim, saying that he loves her so much that he can barely breathe when he's with her, following that up with gut-wrenching lines saying that he used to get fuzzy feelings with Kim, now he's sick of looking at her, and reflecting on the on-again, off-again nature of their relationship, swinging back and forth between going their separate ways and getting back together. With Eminem expressing remorse about making promises that he didn't keep and not getting any more chances after the last time she left. Perhaps this being a reference to his drug use continuing after he got out of rehab and the subsequent breakdown of their second marriage. In the final verse, Eminem explains how both he and Kim say things they regret in their bad-tempered arguments, and echoing earlier sentiments of wanting to get back together, saying that he was the reason for the past relationships breaking down, and detailing times that he told Kim to come back, and taking blame for their past issues and inviting her back into the home, before quickly shifting back to an argument and punching a wall, ending the relationship again for good. Then in the next line, switching back once again to being apologetic and saying that he wants her back once more, before ending the song in a very Slim Shady fashion with another murderous fantasy, much more at home on the Slim Shady LP, saying that if she tries to leave again, he's tying her to the bed and setting the house on fire. With this lyric launching perfectly back into Rihanna's chorus about standing there and watching your loved ones burn, tying together the song's core metaphor of watching a person burn both physically in a house fire and metaphorically seeing them breaking down due to the heated and toxic arguments in the relationship. Not only was this a deeply reflective track for Eminem, exploring his past relationship issues, but it was also a top-tier example of why he's truly one of America's greatest songwriters, let alone rappers. The track is a deeply layered tale and relatable for anybody who's experienced a toxic relationship on either side of the coin. And of course, in true Eminem style, this relatability translated into sales, with Love the Way You Lie becoming Eminem's biggest selling single ever. By May 2020 alone, the track had whopped up a whopping 37 million worldwide sales. It received 5 Grammy nominations and charted in over 27 countries, including #1s in Australia, Austria, Belgium, Canada, Denmark, Finland, Germany, Hungary, Ireland, Israel, Italy, Luxembourg, New Zealand, Norway, Poland, Romania, Slovakia, South Korea, Spain, Sweden, Switzerland, and of course, the top of the US Billboard chart. It went diamond in the US and was certified platinum 13 times, only surpassed in Australia, where it went 14 times platinum. It was a ridiculous song. And once again, Eminem had proved to the world that he still had it. Not only that, but he had proven that he could discuss his relationship with Kim in a much more sympathetic and introspective way than he had previously on his murderous anthems. With this representing a perfect example of Eminem, the top-tier songwriter, moving away from that Slim Shady persona that he relied on previously. This showed the true level of growth and recovery that he had experienced since getting out of rehab and returning to the rap game sober. Eminem was truly on a roll, and he would show no signs of letting up as the years continued to go by. A few years later, on November the 5th, 2013, Eminem would release a sequel to his infamous 2000 release titled The Marshall Mathers LP 2. And the deluxe edition of that album would see Eminem including the song Stronger Than I Was, which gives yet another sympathetic insight into his relationship with Kim, reflecting on the strength that he got from that relationship, as well as apologizing for how he acted towards her in the past, with lyrics on the song that would hint at Kim's unsupportive attitude in the early stages of M's career, as M would sing that Kim used to tell him that he would be nothing without her, leading him to beg her not to leave. The opening of the song would lead into a contrasting chorus, suggesting that he would emerge stronger than he was before they met. Now, this track is another amazing piece of songwriting by Eminem, because the verses are written in a way whereby the song can actually apply to both M and Kim's perspectives. As we know, both sides of the relationship have been toxic and characterized by cheating and emotional manipulation, so the song's sentiment works simultaneously as a sympathetic sonnet, with M putting himself in Kim's shoes and acknowledging the hurtful experience he put her through, as well as him venting about his own perspective and the heartache of her walking away from him. It seems clear to me that this song is focused on the failure of their second marriage, with lyrics referencing his dream of them reconciling and being a family unit again as dead, and with a third verse that focuses primarily on the crushing feelings after the other partner walked away from the relationship, comparing that feeling to actual death, and expressing that after the last breakup, he felt that the whole relationship was a lie, which if you read from Kim's perspective, is really Eminem admitting that he let her down by giving her the impression that he was genuine about reconciling again before walking away, with later lyrics reading from M's perspective, suggesting that he wished he'd fought more for the relationship to survive at the time, but he just didn't have the strength. The song overall strikes a positive tone, with M saying that despite the devastating death of this relationship, he's had to break out of the slump and overcome this heartbreak, ultimately ending the song with one final regretful lyric suggesting that he had planned to call after that final breakup, but he couldn't think of what to say, suggesting that this song itself is perhaps the final closure to that failed marriage and perhaps an apology for walking out on Kim a second time. Once again, in November 2013, shortly after the release of the Marshall Mathers LP 2, rumours would surface in the Daily Mail suggesting that M and Kim were rekindling their romance once again, quoting Kim's mother, who told the paper that M was seeing Kim all the time, along with reports that he was allegedly building her a new mansion on 22 Mile, just 5 miles from his home, with this newspaper source suggesting that Kim had actually been clean of substances for years now, and that as a result, M and Kim were getting on better than ever. However, unfortunately, this wouldn't seem to be the case. Eminem and Kim wouldn't reconcile, and sadly, Kim would not remain sober. Despite Eminem's progress in recovery, a few years later, Kim's own struggles with alcohol would catch up with her, unfortunately catapulting her into the media spotlight once again for all the wrong reasons. In Kim's 2007 interview with Channel 955 Radio, after trashing Eminem as a lover and a father, she would claim that she had learned from her mistakes and would never be that person again.
If there's one thing that you can tell everybody in Michigan and everybody that's always had a bad opinion about you, about the real Kim, what would you want them to know?
Just that, you know what, I made a lot of mistakes and I am sorry, but I've learned from them. I will never be that person again, and people do grow. You know?
Sadly, this was not the case, and 8 years later in 2015, the cycle would seemingly repeat, when she found herself in legal trouble once again, this time for a DUI in October 2015. An incident that she said herself in court was actually an attempt at taking her own life, with Kim admitting to drinking heavily and intentionally driving her Cadillac Escalade off the road, ploughing the car into a ditch and utility pole and flipping it over where it would lay at the side of the road for an extended period of time, with local residents frantically calling 911 and attempting to provide assistance.
911. There is just a horrific crash on 23 Mile Road in Heidenreich. We're just coming to see if the car's okay.
Okay. So do you think there might be injuries?
Yes. We need an ambulance here right away.
Okay. All right. Injuries? What kind of cars are involved?
It's just one car, a black Escalade.
What did it hit?
Card Road, I'm sorry.
Okay, 23 on Card?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Hurry.
Okay, what did the car hit?
She just went off the road, hit a telephone pole.
So she hit the telephone pole?
Yes.
Okay. Is she still in the car?
Yes. Yep. She's moving, but
okay.
Don't see
she's moving
right now. Yeah.
No. Okay. Is she talking at all?
Is she talking? Are you okay, ma'am?
We got everybody coming. I just want to make sure I know what
Yep. Yeah, she's in a lot of pain, though.
Okay. So
Okay.
she's in pain?
Yes.
Okay, do me a favor. If she's able to get out safely, go ahead and have her do so, but I don't want, just in case the pole falls.
Hey, guys, if she can get out safely, try to help her.
Yeah, but if not, just have her stay sitting there.
There's no one else in the vehicle? Okay. There's no one else in the vehicle. There's some other fellows here trying to help her out right now.
Okay, all right. We got everybody coming to help her out, okay?
Okay. Holy
All right,
cow.
thank you.
Yep, bye.
All right.
Did you guys see this happen? Anybody? Okay.
Yeah, we gave the other officer.
Okay.
Kim Mathers. She said she's been drinking and driving. I'm out of here in an hour, by the way.
I know. Traffic's coming.
Totally coming.
Should we let Briny know?
Yeah, he's coming anyways. Just don't move. Fire department right now.
Come on, make sure you make the scene.
Initially, Kim had attempted to keep details about this incident shielded from the media limelight, but Kim's case would be covered extensively on the local news once locals found out who was behind the wheel of that upturned Escalade.
But wait till they find out who's in the car.
Kim Mathers. She said she's been drinking and driving.
Kim Mathers, Eminem's ex-wife, allegedly drinking in broad daylight. According to what she said to police, a whole fifth of rum.
Hey Kim, you've never been charged with drunk driving before?
Like 15 years
Okay,
ago.
all right, so then this would be a first for you. So
Yeah, I guess.
According to the police report, on that day, Mathers made statements that made police think she may be, and from there she was taken to McLaren-Macomb Hospital.
Kim, what are the extent of your injuries? What hurts?
My right wrist and my left foot.
Okay.
Former wife of Detroit rapper Eminem was back in a Shelby Township courtroom today.
The case involving Kim Mathers and her drunk driving crash and admitted suicide attempt is in a far different place than it was last year.
You know who it is?
No.
Kim Mathers.
Is it?
Yep, she's hammered. Like I asked her what happened. She said, I'm drinking and driving. She smells like she's hammered.
Mathers admits in October of 2015 she got drunk and crashed her SUV into a ditch and a utility pole.
How much do you have to drink today, Kim?
Like a bed.
What were you drinking?
In fact, it would later turn out that apparently Kim had attempted to conceal and delay the proceedings around her DUI using a hotshot lawyer.
Well, you'd think the story's over. After all, it's been 7 months. But get this, Kim's OWI is still in the courts, and it's been delayed and delayed. A few months ago, a source called me with a tip that this case was being kept from the public, so I went digging and found these court documents sealing the records. But why? Was it because of Kim Mathers' name?
But do you understand the frustration that, a normal person can't have their DUI case sealed like that?
I don't understand that. I really don't.
Mike Smith is her high-profile attorney.
Usually cases like this are not sealed. Why was it sealed in this case?
Are you a lawyer?
No.
Okay.
I'm asking you. You're the lawyer.
So you don't know all the facts, but I can't get into it, really, seriously.
Okay. Turns out Smith used HIPAA laws to seal the case, and the judge was fine with it.
You go to court since the law's equal for everybody, but, it's, at this point, it depends how deep your pockets are.
Whilst these legal wranglings were going on, Kim would call into Mojo in the morning to deny using her money and status to conceal her DUI.
Our family has never gotten peripheral treatment or whatever in any court case that we've had.
She was involved in a drunk driving accident last fall and had been accused of special treatment because court records had been sealed.
After I realized how much drama it was calling, I willingly unsealed the files so that everybody could know my personal business yet again.
Around the time of the situation being made public, she would come out in the media trying to set the record straight, telling the world that this drunken accident was actually an attempt to harm herself after the death of her sister.
Mathers now admitting it was no accident.
I sat at the end of a road where I knew that no one else but myself would get hurt. Yes, I drank, I took pills, and I hit the gas and aimed for a pole.
What you're admitting was a attempt?
Yes. And they knew that. That's why those records were sealed. There was medical information in there. It had nothing to do with the rest of the case.
Mathers claims she had been clean for 10 years, but says she struggles with living in the public eye. She has suffered from depression, especially after she discovered her twin sister dead from an alleged drug overdose in a Warren trailer park.
Honestly, I was starting to do better. And after the death of my sister, you know, I had to go and look at her dead in that trailer. And just everything that was being said about her, it just hurts. And now this.
Kim would also reveal that Eminem had been supportive of her through this as a friend.
On the radio, Mojo asked if her ex-husband, Marshall Mathers, has been there for her along the way.
Yeah,
there to help you
he's
through
been
this?
Real supportive. We're really close friends. We're just trying to raise our kids together and make it as normal for them as possible.
Apparently, she had planned to fight this case in private, but once details had become public, she decided to plead no contest, ultimately getting a year of probation and $900 in fines.
Really, truly, deeply sorry for my actions that day. They were selfish, destructive. I didn't take into consideration anybody else's safety and the feelings of my family, and I'm truly sorry.
Today in court, Mathers let her attorney do most of the talking.
Her life has been a fishbowl. It's been magnified by anything she does because of who she was married to.
The judge noting Mathers took immediate actions to get help following the crash.
We have someone that has engaged in treatment, which I appreciate as well. Many people wait. They wait till after the court disposes of the matter or based upon the court's order.
Then gave her 12 months probation. She also can't drink alcohol and will be tested for drugs and alcohol.
I'm seeking the proper medical attention that I need and following through. So
Mathers says failing to think of others was by far her biggest mistake.
or how I made my family feel. And again, I'm truly sorry for putting anyone else at risk and hurting my family.
But sadly, these issues wouldn't simply go away following the case. At a March 20th, 2017 court hearing, Kim would be seen with her lawyer discussing issues with ongoing drug testing as part of the subsequent supervision related to this plea.
Ms. Mathers voluntarily went on SoberLink back on February 14th. Your Honor, she's had 197 tests on SoberLink. They're unremarkable. They all came back negative. I went over those tests with the probation officer. She also had a hair sample back on February 14th, and that came back negative based on one prescription that she does take, and I indicated that to the court. With that, Your Honor, I would think that I would like Ms. Mathers to get off of the ETG, continue on SoberLink, and we can review this case, if this court would like, in 60 to 90 days.
I am impressed by the fact that she has on her own, without any order of the court, to switch over to SoberLink, which is a repetitive daily testing procedure. It's a handheld device that tests the person randomly or on a schedule daily, several times a day, which is much more comprehensive actually than the ETG tests, and she's done very well on that. So the court will, at this time, I'm going to continue this matter for a 90-day period. I want to see how she does on SoberLink. If she's trying to avoid detection, the SoberLink will, in fact, find out and report it to us that she's consuming alcohol. We don't have any actual positive tests related to alcohol at this point, or, of course, any type of illegal, non-prescribed medication as well. We're going to continue this matter for a 90-day period so the court can review this matter and make sure that she maintains her abstinence, maintains her other conditions of her probation.
I did nothing wrong. I went above and beyond to prove to the court that I'm compliant. I take the judge's order seriously, and I just want to move on.
Interestingly, in December 2017, it seemed that Eminem was finally done dragging Kim publicly, opening up in a Vulture magazine interview on his current feelings towards Kim, stating that he's not killing her on songs anymore and that they're good now, saying that he was respecting her as the mother of his daughter. Then, on his politically focused December 2017 release Revival, Eminem would drop the song Bad Husband, where he once again opened up about his struggles with Kim. This track would essentially serve as an outright apology for the role that he played in their turbulent relationship, with the chorus of the song labeling Eminem as a good dad but bad husband, along with verses where Eminem reflects on almost enjoying their public feuds and getting in the booth to diss Kim. He would suggest that their toxic relationship was the perfect inspiration for some of the most iconic music made in his career. But Eminem ultimately says that if he could go back in time, he would have done things differently. Again, referencing getting physical with Kim, suggesting that he had used the excuse of her getting violent with him to retaliate in the same way, pondering why did he punch back. He'd also elaborate on his decision to end the marriage the second time round, saying that they ultimately brought out the worst in each other and that he felt that he had to be the one to finally end the toxicity, and saying that she brought out a dark side of him that he simply couldn't handle. Later rapping that he didn't believe they were both bad people, just that they were bad together, and ultimately apologizing and saying that in the end, leaving her was as hard as losing a limb. He would suggest that they perhaps loved each other too much, which caused them to act erratically all of these years, with Eminem concluding the song saying that there's no use arguing over whose fault it was, and suggesting that there was blame on both sides, and wrapping up saying that the relationship is now truly over and that this song itself is the closure to that relationship. Eminem had shown an enormous amount of growth in the near 10 years that he'd been clean at this point, acknowledging his mistakes and taking responsibility in the role that he played in the toxic back and forths with Kim. Eminem seemingly had moved on from his demons, but sadly, Kim would still be struggling with her mental health behind the scenes, ultimately attempting to take her own life again in 2021, as was reported by celebrity news outlet TMZ.
Kim is right now undergoing mental evaluation after an emergency call to her home, and police believe, based on what they saw there, that this was an attempted on Kim's part. And they, when paramedics arrived at her home and police as well arrived at the home, they found her with cuts on the back of her leg and very combative.
But she was actually so combative that we're told that paramedics couldn't even get vitals, which of course, anytime there's a blood loss and there's paramedics involved, that's really important.
Clearly the limelight has been too much for Kim to bear, and understandably, she has chosen for now to try and shield herself from the media's gaze, battling her demons in as much privacy as she can possibly maintain. It's clear that Kim was a flawed human being, as was Eminem, with her demons likely coming the result of an abusive childhood and the struggles of growing up without guidance in some of Detroit's harshest households. It seemed that when Kim and Em got together, neither of them could have imagined reaching the heights that they did, with Eminem essentially becoming a musical legend akin to this generation's Elvis. Despite having aspirations of being a successful musician, there is absolutely no way Eminem could have anticipated the speed or intensity of the fame that he would achieve after being discovered by Dr. Dre. No doubt he didn't even realize how far his words would travel when he recorded music saying the most awful things about his on and off again girlfriend. Nor were Eminem and Kim prepared for the spotlight of becoming one of the most famous couples in American pop culture. It's easy to judge Kim for the mistakes she made or what she put Eminem through, but it's truly difficult for anyone to truly predict how they would behave if they were put in the same shoes. I'll be honest, I didn't really expect to get this far on YouTube this fast, and managing the little pipette of fame that I have achieved is much harder than I could have imagined too. I honestly don't think I could have dealt with what Eminem went through. But as Eminem has said numerous times, the rocky and rabid relationship that he had with Kim in many ways inspired some of his best songs and projects. He's not wrong for thinking that perhaps he wouldn't have made such huge records had he not had this emotional inspiration from this relationship to write them. And it's really Eminem's open-hearted writing about his difficult relationship that makes his music so relatable. We've all had a difficult time with a partner, a heartbreaking breakup that pushed us to the brink, maybe a fantasy of revenge against those who have wronged you too. Many people have lashed out with a spiteful act or word in the heat of the moment that you would come to regret. Whether it's the struggles of growing up poor in a rough part of town, just wanting to put food on the table for your family, or the crushing heartbreak after a relationship goes wrong, Eminem's songs do really speak for us all. And through every era of his career, despite his fame, he has managed to put the day-to-day struggles that he felt in his life into lyrics that we can all relate to. That's why he is who he is, and that's why he is where he is. So, I hope that going forward, Kim can find peace away from the media spotlight. And I hope that the two of them can remain sober and stable for as long as possible after the roller coaster ride that they went through together. I hope you enjoyed watching this story and learning about their history. I enjoyed researching it for you. Thanks so much for watching, and peace out.